Please say welcome to somebody beside you. Say welcome. Say welcome. You are free to say welcome in your language too. Diverse language. Okay. The Honorable Minister of Works and Housing, ably represented here by NIQS State of the President of the NIQS of Quantity Surveyors, QS Michael Lion Shinobi, present. The President of the Federation of Construction Industries, Engineer Nasir Dantata. The President of the Quantity Surveyors Regional Board of Nigeria and moderator for today's event, QS Motalabi. Of the NIQS of Quantity Surveyors here present. past presidents of the Nigerian so-called surveyors present, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, Engineer F. Ajibade Oke, President, Association of Consulting Engineers of Nigeria, QS Olusegun Ajale-Nkoko. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Bode Augusto, our guest speaker, Alhaji Aziz Olatoye, of the Nigerian so-called surveyors and members as well of FOSI. My name is QS Bolaji Shotunde, and I bid you all welcome to this business roundtable. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me pleasure amongst two very distinguished bodies that perhaps of our nation, particularly in terms of construction, real estate development, and overall. Some brief protocols for today's event. We do understand and know that the COVID rule and ensure that we maintain all safety protocols at all times. For us to move out of here, there are two exits out of this hall. One to my near left. Our restrooms are very well equipped to take charge of any excesses you might take in. An extra plate of food when we start. The restroom, you go towards my left. Walk in it. Emergencies. The management of this facility have first aid requirements to attend their direct contact with emergency operators that can bring in an ambulance. And if you see anything that does not belong to you, maybe a BVN or a PIN. So we do recognize you online and appreciate you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I would like to bring up here for opening remarks and welcome address. Please come up for his welcome address. Please, a round of applause for the engineer.
The President of NIQS, the Presidents of other professional bodies in the built environment, the Executive Secretary, FCDA, our keynote speaker who has joined online, Mr. Bode Augusto, the Managing Partner of Accession Consulting Services, Mr. Aziz, the President of the Quantity Surveyors Registration Board, Malam Murshala Alim, Chief Executives of member companies, Council members of FOSI and NIQS, all invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, pressmen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this very important program. It is the first of its kind, and we hope to continue with similar initiatives in the coming years. A little bit about FOSI. The Federation of Construction Industry is the umbrella body for responsible construction companies in Nigeria, big, medium, and small. FOSI is this year celebrating 68 years as a registered association in Nigeria. FOSI helps to ensure members benefit from competitive advantage in all aspects of construction in Nigeria. This is achieved through the following. FOSI is responsible for safeguarding the interest of members by ensuring fair and equitable treatment. FOSI sustains commitment to excellence and compliance with standards in the construction industry. This is perhaps the reason why some companies shy away from becoming members. FOSI also houses the Construction and Civil Engineering Employers Association, called CIAM, which is responsible for negotiating the minimum terms and conditions of service for employees in the construction industry through the National Joint Industrial Council. This body is the only recognized body for doing such negotiations.
Recording in progress.
By the Ministry of Labor. FOSI provides insights into the impact of upcoming legislative changes, and we also advocate on behalf of members of such legislations before they become law. FOSI also produces publications that aid business decisions for the use of our members and our stakeholders. An example is the price index, which publicizes the prices of various construction materials on a quarterly basis. However, these days it's very difficult to put prices on a quarterly basis. We are trying to go online so that we can be dynamic as the prices are as well. FOSI has recently established the FOSI Skills Academy, which trains world-class artisans for use of its members in Nigeria and the Nigerian population in general. I'm happy to report that there was a competition in Abuja for masons and other artisans last week, and Madam DG reported that 2 of our trainees at the academy were honored as the first and the second in the competition. So we know that we are doing it right. Thank you very much. So FOSI is the major stakeholder in the Nigerian construction industry. Our members are actively and have participated in building some of the most critical infrastructures in Nigeria. We have over 80 active members at present, so FOSI is therefore greatly affected by the annual budget and policies of the government, both on federal and state levels. FOSI took a decision to partner with the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, NIQS, to organize these constructive discussions on the 2022 Appropriation Act and other fiscal policies of federal government, in particular the Finance Acts. This event is the first of its kind, and we are delighted to have seasoned professionals to give us insight into what the year 2022 holds for the industry. Some may say it is already late since we have exhausted the first quarter, but in terms of budget, I think the budget is just about to kick off as confirmed by the Honorable Minister. So this event is just on time. I think subsequent events, we will work together with NIQS and expand to other professional bodies and also the academia, so that we can have an all-inclusive discussion that will aid in executing budgets and also in future budgeting. We call the attention of recent hyperinflationary trend on the basic prices of key construction resources in the country, which has become a great concern of our members. Within the space of January to March this year, the prices of key basic materials have increased several points over their original prices at the beginning of the year. This position is further compounded by the lack of enough provisions of variation of price clauses in our major projects. The 5% that is normally provided is no longer realistic in this current setting. This situation has therefore affected the fate of construction projects and activities in the country, critically disrupting contract execution, cash flows, and the economics of job creation tied to these ongoing projects. As an example, if you are to use 1 million liters of diesel sometime last quarter of last year, you need about 360 million naira or so. As of today, that same quantity will set you back 700 million naira. So the provision of such changes need to be adjusted in our project, or other alternative ways need to be made by government, because such increases normally will go back to the client. Let me not preempt the discussion of today. We hope that at the end of this business meeting, solutions will emerge on favorable implementation of the Appropriation Act 2022 and recommendations on how to solve some of the challenges faced by the construction industry. I wish us fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
The President, please. All right. I so much enjoy the brotherly rapport between the two presidents. Please clap for him. I want to bring your indulgence to abridge the protocol a little bit. I want to recognize a couple of people. Permit me at least to recognize my collaborator and partner in this deal, Engineer Nasir Udatata of Federation of Construction Industries. The Honorable Minister, sir, ably represented by our own QS, Timitope Bini. The presidents of professional bodies here are present. President of AKIN, Engineer Ajibade Oke, President of Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, Town Planner Toyin Ayinde, Council Member of FOSI, members of the National Executive Council of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, Council members of FOSI, past president of Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, both online and physically present. President of the Quantity Surveyors Registration Board of Nigeria, Malam Tala Ali, President of Commonwealth Association of Surveyors and Land Economy, KOS Olusegun Ajani. I'm aware that the first Deputy President of Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria, Mr. Manasseh Rubian, is here. Can you please rise up for recognition, sir? He's representing the president of the APPL, Sofio Akin Oyabola, who is unavoidably absent. Well, when the idea of this construction roundtable, on the Appropriation Act started, it was my belief that the professional bodies, all the professionals involved in construction, we should have a voice. We should influence what happens in the construction sector. How much is allocated? What are the physical policies that will affect construction? And for me, I thought if NIQS were to do this alone, maybe it will appear more to what do we know. But let's bring in other professionals. And of course, that was what informed the discussion with the FOSI. Like the MC said, they are the contractors, we are the consultants. What about the other consultants? But this being the first one, we are hoping that we can also bring in other consultants that are involved in the construction sector. And of course, some of them will be here to discuss and give their own perspective to the fiscal policies that are enunciated in the
Finance Act 2022 that would impact on the budget. Now, this is the first, and maybe that is why there might be a little hiccups. But moving forward, and I'm glad that General Master Dr. Ofosi has also confirmed, we intend to make this a regular one, and the subsequent one will be expanded to bring in all the participants in the construction sector, from the consultant and the contractor. So it's not only going to be QS as consultant, but we have engineers as consultants, town planners as consultants, all in the construction industry. How do we influence government to grant on fiscal policies that would make our effort easier? Nobody thought of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we all know how this has impacted on our industry negatively. And you also just mentioned diesel. But what about logistics? In terms of logistic chain globally, it has impacted so badly that shipping cost has gone up, haulage cost has also gone up. How would our clients, how would they understand when the contractor submit a claim for fluctuation? And like Bolaji said, the QS says, sorry, you have to pay for this. Everybody thinks, well, we have collaborated, but we are not colluding. There are two different words. Because the first thing is to say, the QS have colluded with the contractors. But this is collaboration, and the whole idea is to highlight possible areas where there will be rising costs. So hopefully at the end of the day, because I don't want to preempt what will be said here, but what is also important is for us to look at this as first in the series, and then looking at this as a forum for all the professionals in the built environment to come together to discuss areas where we can discuss issues affecting our industry. The manufacturing sector, they have demand to discuss and influence policies in government. Why can't we in the construction sector? Not only FOSI, but we consultants, because before FOSI can come in, before contractors come in, the consultants have to do their work. We do the designs, the contractors build. So obviously, any government effort will affect whatever we design. So we should also be involved. We should be involved, because we do the costing also, we should be involved in deciding some of these policies, in telling government this is what you should do if you want this to move. In other parts of the world, construction is the one that really reflate the economy when you have inflation. In areas where there is unemployment, easily, because given the way we operate in Africa, where most of our construction work is labor intensive, easily you can get a lot of people off ground. We're talking about banditry because boys don't have jobs. But if we are able to encourage the construction industry to try, obviously all those boys will be taken out of the forest and they will have jobs, they will be engaged, gainfully engaged, and there will be less thought on criminality. So those are the areas that I think we all need to begin to look at with government to see how we can come up with policies that will help in ameliorating some of these challenges. On this note, let me also acknowledge the presence of our keynote speaker, Mr. Bode Augusto, and on behalf of everybody here, I want to commiserate with him. He's taking this on at a particularly difficult time for him because he lost a very close relative. But despite that, as a true professional that he is, he decided that he will still go ahead and give this. So, Mr. Augusto, on behalf of everyone present here, on behalf of Nigerian Responsibilities of yours and FOSI, we commiserate with you on your loss and pray that Almighty God will comfort you and the entire family. Let me also welcome Alhaji Aziz Alatoye, who is here to talk about the fiscal policies that affect our industry in the 2022 budget. Thank you, Alhaji, for taking this as a short notice. God bless you. I wish you all a happy birthday. God bless you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Please, a round of applause for him once again. Thank you so much, and of course, anyway. It's a good initiative, and really, with what both gentlemen have said here, It is really, there's no better time really than to begin to have this kind of engagements and for the benefit of the future of our dear nation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into one of the key segments of today's program, which is the keynote presentation. But before we hand over the program, the citation of the keynote speaker. And to help us with that, I'd please like to welcome the Secretary, Marketing and Corporate Affairs of the Nigerian Institute of Conditioners, NIQS Adironke Oyelami, to help us with the citation. Please a round of applause for her, please.
Over 3 decades of work experience in both the private and public sector. Bode was an Assistant Vice President in Citibank, Nigeria, a partner in Price Waterhouse Company, and Director General and Advisor of Budget Matters to President Obasanjo during his 2nd term in office. He was also a non-executive director of the National Pension Commission, PENCOM, the Shell Nigeria Pension Fund, and a member of the Monetary Policy Committee, that's MPC, of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He is currently an independent researcher and consultant. His research interests and speaking engagements cover politics, economics, and business strategy in the key economies of sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, Angola, Kenya, Tanzania, Ivory Coast, Ghana, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Cameroon. He has served as advisor to various companies in Nigeria. He's also a non-executive director of Augusto and Company Limited and Guarantee Trust Bank PLC. Bode holds a degree in accounting from the University of Lagos, an executive certificate in strategy and innovation from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Sloan School of Management, and is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. To welcome Mr. Olabode Augusto, MFR.
Minister of Works, represented by QS Temitope Gwemi, Engineer Nasiru Dankata, the President of FOSI, and the President of NIQS, QS Olaya Mission. Ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to break from protocol a little bit and recognize my own QS Olusegun Ajande Koko. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to say that I like what FOSI is doing, embracing other people like the QS and all the other people engaged in the construction industry. Because as we shall see from this presentation, the challenges are big. We all need to work together. All hands must be on deck, please. Challenges and what can be done. So, let's look at the Appropriation Act. How much does government plan to spend? The federal government of Nigeria plans to spend 14.7 trillion in 2022. Just under 15 trillion. They plan to spend 3 trillion pay interest on their loans. 0.9 trillion on statutory transfers. What do we mean by statutory transfers? Monies they need to give to other areas of government by law. For example, what they need to give the National Assembly, what they need to give the Judiciary, what they need to give the Niger Delta Development Commission, what they need to give INEC, what they need to give to the Universal Basic Education Commission, and other agencies of government. Then 4.1 trillion to pay the salaries and wages of their workers and unfunded pensions. What do we mean by unfunded pensions? Pensions that the government has not set aside money separately while the employee was working. For example, the pension that we pay to the military is unfunded. Then other recurrent expenditure, like trader money or whatever we dish out to people and overheads for day-to-day running of government. And the last but not the least is what we regard as government investment, which is the capital expenditure, 4.5 trillion. We are from the construction industry and we are very familiar with the government of Nigeria coming up with large budgets, but not being able to implement it in full. So anybody can budget any amount. More importantly, ability to fund it is what is critical. But before we leave this page, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the interest on loans. We believe that the interest on loans might be significantly understated. So we have adjusted that number. Because we know that interest is the volume multiplied by the rate. We know that the federal government of Nigeria owes roughly 20 trillion to the domestic debt market. If you use an interest rate of 8% in this depressed market, that will give us about 1.6 trillion. The government also owes the CBN in form of overdraft, another 20 trillion. And we know that the interest rate on that is the MPR rate minus 200 basis points, that is minus 2%. Therefore, they pay 9.5% interest on that. And that will get us to 1.9 trillion. Then we also owe just under 40 billion in US dollars. And if we use an average rate of 5% on that, we get 2 billion US. And 420 or 400 to 1 gives us 0.8. So that in aggregate gives us about 4.3 trillion in terms of interest. So we have adjusted the interest number to about 4.5 trillion because we're going to borrow additional this year as well. So that's the little adjustment that we have made. And let's move forward now. How much money can the government raise in 2022 to fund her budget? FGN. The war in Ukraine has led to an increase in oil revenues. But we estimate that about 10 billion US dollars will go to PMS subsidy. Therefore, it's going to erode significantly the amount of gains we get from that area. And since the bulk of the incremental revenue is oil revenue, 13% will go to derivation to the state governments that produce the oil anyway. It's only the rest that will flow into the federation account, and the federal government will get roughly about half of that. This means that the impact on FGN revenue is unlikely to be huge. So we believe that about 5.5 trillion will be the aggregate revenue of government. We also believe that external borrowing will be constrained in 2022. Why do we believe that the external borrowing will be constrained in 2022? The reason is that the war in Ukraine has caused what we describe in finance as a flight to safety. People are dumping emerging market bonds, and the yields, the interest on emerging market bonds have spiked. For Nigeria, for example, the 10-year bond yield is roughly about 10% now. We doubt whether the federal government of Nigeria will go into market and borrow dollars at 10% when they can borrow naira at lower than 10%. And that's why we believe that the external borrowing will be significantly constrained. We're not going to do the $5-6 billion that we did last year. At best, we think we'll do about 1 billion US. Then borrowing from the domestic markets, we think about 4 trillion will be the amount that we'll be able to raise from that. Again, that has its own constraint as well. If federal government comes into the domestic debt market and borrows aggressively, interest rates must necessarily go up. And the central bank is managing interest rate downwards at the moment, and we don't think that they will come into the market and aggressively borrow. So we estimate about 4 trillion there. Then the last bit is borrowing in form of overdraft from the central bank. Again, that is constrained because the central bank finances this largely by taking some of the deposits of the banking industry and lending it to the federal government of Nigeria. So deposit growth will be the constraint here. Our estimate is roughly about 4 trillion here as well. So we believe that even though the federal government of Nigeria plans to spend about 14.7 trillion in 2022, we believe they'll be able to fund about roughly 14 trillion in 2022. So it will not be able to fund everything in full. That is the view that we have taken. What then are the priorities of government? How will they arrange their spending? What are they going to allocate money to first? What are they going to allocate money to second? And what will be the balance that will be available to finance capital expenditure? So, out of the available 13.9 trillion, the first thing that will go is to pay interest on loans. In fact, the Accountant General of the Federation will deduct that upfront before putting money available to government to spend. So interest will go first. Then we'll pay the salaries and wages of our workers and their pensions. Then we'll pay the statutory transfers. Then we'll pay other recurrent expenditure. We believe that other recurrent expenditure will be funded fairly well this year because a significant proportion of it will be monies that they want to transfer to people in terms of cash grants, and elections are coming. We would like the people to feel good. So at the end of the day, we believe that the balance that will be available for capital expenditure will be about 3.4 trillion. So about 75% of the planned capex, government should be able to fund it, which is not a bad number given the historical track record. So let's look at government investment. Here we're doing some comparatives, and in order to compare like with like, because these other countries of Kenya, Ghana are unitary governments, the central government controls everything. They don't have state governments that make significant spending. So we have to compare like with like. So we're taking the spending of the federal government of Nigeria, we have added the spending of the states and government-owned enterprises as well. So that takes us to 2% of our national income, is roughly what we have spent over a 5-year period of 2016 to 2020 in terms of capital expenditure. Kenya has spent more, 6.5%. Ghana slightly more than us, and Uganda significantly more than us. But another way in which we look at the size of government investment is that, okay, on average, what is the useful life of infrastructure that government puts? Big infrastructure that government puts. If well maintained, maybe if we stretch it and say it's 50 years. 50 years means annual depreciation of 2%. So we need to do more than 2% in order to grow the stock of capital investment in our environment. That is the view that we have taken. And when we also look at the population growth, which is close to 3%, we need to do significantly more than the 2% that we're doing. That is the view that we have taken. Then let's look at appropriations for 2020. In the billion, agriculture 285, 180 National Relations Commission, because we plan a Senate for sometime this year or next year. Education 130, 153. Then we have something like a capital supplementation, with some money away that they allocate to various sectors, like the unders and overs. But if we translated this into US dollars, we see that 1.1 billion is what we have for works. The size of our economy is around about 450 billion. It's a tiny fraction of our economy that we are investing. And when we look at the agriculture, less than $1 billion. And when we see why we argue that the size of government investment is very small. So let's see how much growth we have been able to generate. The average for a 5-year average between 2016 and 2020 is less than 1%. Population grows by roughly 2.8%. Kenya was able to do 4.4%, Ghana 4.9%, Uganda 4.5%. So all the other countries are between 4 and 5. And the question might actually be, why has Ghana been able to generate government investment roughly the same? The answer is the size of private sector investment. The size of private sector investment is bigger in Ghana because, as we're going to see later, there are enough policies today that are constraining private investment as well. Then let's look at the size of debt of the government of Nigeria. We're talking local currency debt, Naira debt of 9. You'll see that it's somewhere between a little bit above 130% and 280%, which is Ghana at the highest point. Ghana is 280% because we have picked the year of COVID, the year 2020. In the year 2019, Ghana was 180%. In the year 2019, Nigeria was 600, around about 700. So COVID spiked for everybody, more or less. So we see here that the size of our debt is 8-9 times our revenue, which is a constraint. It impairs the ability of governments to make a significant investment. So let's look at growth. We've seen growth in Nigeria average of 0.1%, of 1.4%. Then growth in the construction industry is even smaller than growth in the overall economy. So the construction industry is faring worse than the overall economy. And it's not too difficult to find the reason why this is happening. Government investment is lower once you adjust those figures for inflation. Government investment is lower once we adjust the figures for inflation. And secondly, private sector investment is not very big as well, because as we're going to see later, there are a number of things that are constraining the ability of the private sector to also grow. So let's look at growth. What about the profitability of the construction industry? For the few companies that are making money, they're not making great money either, in the sense that for every 100 naira of sales, the profit tax is somewhere between 2 naira and 4 naira for every 100 naira they sell, which means that the margin, the profit margin, is very thin in the construction industry. And that is not unusual. It can be explained because we are more often than not engaged in competitive bids. Secondly, inflation, price increases, eroding our profitability, and we end up with very small margins. The next that goes into our profitability is the extent to which we sweat our assets to generate revenues. So sometimes 60% of our total assets, or maybe at best 100% of our total assets is what we generate as revenue. Because there is spare capacity. Our construction companies can do more than the amount of contracts they're able to win. So there is spare capacity, which is impairing and generate revenues as well. Then leverage, the extent to which we use debt. Because when we see the total assets of a company and we deduct the shareholders' equity, the rest is debt. And the leverage here is very high, 8 to 10 times is some sort of range where we cluster in terms of the use of debt. But that is not unusual. In the construction industry, we work with monies that have been given to us by our clients. So the leverage is not really frightening, even though it's because the money that we have collected from our clients are never going to go back to them. We're going to use it to do their work. is not going to be paid at some times. What we tend to see in the construction industry. Very thin margin, low to moderate utilization of assets and very high leverage. But the profitability is typically between 10 and 40% before tax. And by the time we deduct 32% tax, we're left with 10% to 27%. 10% is a very low number because inflation is currently around 16%. So if we're earning a 10% return, it means that we're earning a return that is below the rate of inflation. So profitability for Google a few. One is that in absolute naira terms, the size of capital expenditure that will be implemented this year of 3.4 trillion is significantly higher than what has been implemented in prior periods. The figures that we have on this chart from 2017 to 2021 have actually been obtained from the Budget Office of the Federation. The 3.7 trillion sounded a bit high to us, but you are the people who are on the receiving end of those contracts, and you are the ones that will know whether the 3.7 trillion is a realistic number or not. But those are the numbers that we got from the Budget Office of the Federation. Then, interest rates are very low. Is that an opportunity for us? Because we don't borrow much. Because when you compare it with some other countries of the world that have low inflation, for example, the United States of America is 2% long-term rate of inflation. So the difference in inflation between the two currencies is 10%. So inflation is a big challenge, and the short-term rate is now even much higher than this long-term rate of 12%. What can we do about this? We must work as a team and begin to lobby vigorously and put pressure on government. They must allow some sort of indexation or price variation to the contracts. It has to be. And if we work together as a team and put pressure on government, we will succeed, in my opinion. But if we work as individuals, it's unlikely that we'll move the needle anywhere because they will break our ranks. It's so important for us to work together because it's not going to work. The country will even suffer because projects will not get completed on time. For example, that's another issue that we have highlighted. A project of 2 to 3 years might take 10 to 12 years. Nothing comes to the table to help the economy grow. We rarely complete projects. The second issue in the area of challenge will be to source foreign exchange. Can we get the foreign exchange that we need to import some of the materials that we need to do our work? We might say, hallelujah, we're going to sell oil at an average of above $100 per barrel in 2022. So dollar inflows should go up significantly. Yes, based on this projection that we have here, dollar inflows will go up from about 43 billion last year to about 70 billion in 2022. But let's also bear in mind that not all the dollar inflows on the oil side will go to the government. There are foreign companies, international oil companies, that own roughly half of the equity stake in the oil industry. And they will take their own dollars when they sell their products. Of course, they'll pay taxes to government in dollars as well. But the aggregate amount of the incremental dollars that will come to the government is not the difference between the 43 and the 70 that we can see there. It's going to be much lower. So, if we get additional dollar inflows into the country in this year, what are we going to do with the dollars? Okay. So, this is what is going to happen. What's going to happen clearly is that we're going to spend way more importing petroleum products because prices have jumped up. It's going to be just a little bit under $1 a liter that we're going to be spending to import. And we're going to be consuming about 70 million liters per day. So $70 million that are burning every day, multiply that by 365, we get a number that's going to be close to the 22 billion that we have there. That's what we're likely to import. So what is now going to be available for other goods and services will be about 78, not significantly higher than the 70. So even the jump in dollar inflows into the country, a significant chunk of it will go towards importing petroleum products. And what is going to be available for the rest of us is not going to be significantly different than what we had in 2021. That loses value by only 2 percentage points a year. So whether we like it or not, in the long term, as long as this difference in inflation exists, Naira will continue to lose value at close to 10 per year. It's an area of economics where all economists agree upon. There is no it depends on it. Currency that has a higher long-term rate of inflation is the weaker of the two currencies, and we lose value by roughly the difference in inflation over the long term. So what do we see? Exchange rates for 2022. We see that because the government is going to earn more dollars, because their policy option is that they want to peg the exchange rate of Naira to the dollar, and they will have additional dollars in their pocket to support this year. So the official rate will not move much. Also, it's an election year, so they will support the exchange rate in the official market. But if they don't put money into the black market, parallel market will continue moving. We believe we'll close at about 620 by the end of this year. So the parallel market premium will widen, is what we are likely to see in the foreign exchange market. Then, what are the other challenges? The other challenge is that therefore the construction industry is being impacted negatively. So we can see that the size of government, private sector investment and foreign investment. But that is not happening. Why is that not happening? The interest rate, the mandatory cash reserve requirement. The way banking business works, I beg your pardon, bank will raise capital. Once he raises that capital, he will get a license, and he will start leveraging that capital by taking deposits from their customers. Those deposits are now going to be lent out to businesses and households to grow the economy. But today we have a situation where the central bank takes 50% of those deposits as cash reserves. Historically, cash reserves were 5-10% of deposits for nearly all of my working life until we had this central bank government. And I'm only 1 year younger than Fosi. So what we now have is a situation where a significant proportion of banking sector deposits that could be lent to businesses to grow their factories, to grow output, is now being sitting in the CBN, and CBN is lending it to the federal government of Nigeria to fund her budgets. So that's the situation that we have, and that's constraining private sector investment. We also have the exchange rate policy of the government, pegging the Naira to the dollar. Imagine if you are a foreign investor and you want to invest in Nigeria because there is demand for the product that you want to sell. People want to buy. But are you going to bring your money in at 420 to 1 when you can look next door and see transactions being done at 580, at 590 to 1? So that's constraining foreign investment. So when we look at the net foreign investment line of Nigeria, we'll see that over the past few years, it's a net outflow of money rather than a net inflow of dollars into Nigeria that we would have liked. Then, the pump price of petroleum products. We just estimated that it's going to be $10 billion US this year in terms of subsidy. It's bigger than the capital budget of Nigeria. because $3.4 trillion is what we're talking about. $10 billion is 4.2 trillion. So it's constraining growth, and electricity tariffs will take their own. And based on the estimates that I got from some of our people in Augusto and Co., the annual amount of money that the government gives to the discos is in excess of 2 trillion a year. So there's subsidy here as well. So all these things are constraining the ability of government to invest in growth-promoting areas of the economy. So the impact that we are seeing is that stock market valuations are weak, net foreign investment is negative, and growth and employment are all suffering. So these are the big challenges that we have with Nigeria as an investment destination. Then what are the other key challenges? Small ones, big ones, but there are still challenges that we need to talk about. One is the rate of withholding tax for construction companies. Again, we need to work together. We need to engage the Minister of Finance. We need to show them clearly that the industry profitability is not as high as anticipated when they were setting 2.5% as withholding tax on contract activities. Today, we are saying that best case, most people will earn profit before tax as a percentage of their sales of 4%. So if we take 30% of that 4% as companies' income tax, is 1.2%. That tells us straight away that withholding tax on construction contracts should not be more than 1%. A lot of us are sitting on piles of accounts receivable from the FIRS. I think we need to engage. We need to show them very clearly that industry profitability cannot support this level of withholding taxes. We need to free cash flow so that we can do your work and we can be more productive as an industry. Timely receipt of contract receivables, and then the length of time it takes to complete projects are critical issues as well. But they're also enmeshed in the politics of our environment today. We have 109 senatorial districts, and each senator will want something in his senatorial district to show his people. We have 360 members of the House of Representatives, constituency projects. So we spread ourselves thinly, and we hardly complete anything. So maybe we need an infrastructure fund that we're going to have, that we're going to better control. But in summary, there are big issues that are facing us. One is the size of government investment. How are we going to tackle the size of government investment and grow the capital expenditure by government significantly? Maybe to 4 or 5% of the size of the economy, like the other countries that we have compared ourselves with. It will require tax reforms. It will require enforcement of tax compliance. It will require refocusing government spending, doing less of recurrent and more of capital. It will require policy changes in terms of the exchange rate management policy so that we can attract foreign investment. It will require policy changes with respect to the cash reserve requirements so that we can free cash for the banks to be able to lend to the private sector businesses to grow their output. It will also require more discipline with respect to management of our affairs generally so that we can bring down inflation. These are all enmeshed in politics, unfortunately. And we need to lobby vigorously for policy changes. And it can only be done as serious impact groups and working together. So, thank you very much. I hope you have been taking questions into the chat box so that we can take some questions as well. Thank you.
I believe you can hear me, sir, Mr. Augusto.
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
All right, I note that you are 1 year younger than Fozi, but at least you can hear us loud and clear. Thank you once again for that presentation. Can we all give him a very good round of applause for that? Yeah, and perhaps we want to have, I think during the discussions, we'll probably have you get comments and maybe some kind of questions on your presentation when we have the panel discussion. You'll be the online discussant at that level, so please indulge you to please not go too far away from us, even as we continue.
So we're taking the second place. That is fine, not a problem.
Thank you. Round of applause for him once again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you took your notes. I have to take from there. The data, the presentation, the slides, man, it's scary. But thank God we are collaborating. Thank God we are collaborating. You can only get better. Somebody say you can get better. Say it, you can get better. So you're also scared. Don't worry, to get better. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to welcome back here again for another citation for our next speaker, Alhaji Aziz Alatoye, who is going to take us through some of his own slides. Please, she's here already. SMCA NIQS. A round of applause for her.
Is Alhaji Aziz Alatoye. He is a managing partner of Ascension Consulting Services. Aziz provides support for the business development, operational excellence, and practice management of the firm. He has worked with Z.O. Oshoswanya, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Akintola Williams Deloitte, Ernst & Young, and Saffron Professional Services prior to commencing Ascension Consulting Services on the 1st of August 2012. Aziz has extensive knowledge, skills, and experience in fiscal matters, petroleum industry tax matters, international tax, business tax compliance and advisory, human capital tax, and indirect taxes. Aziz is a holder of the HND in accountancy from Kwara State Polytechnic, Ilorin. He also is solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria and a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. I ask you to welcome Alhaji Aziz transaction taxes on the construction industry.
Slides. Mr. President of FOSI, the President of NIQS, the various presidents present, distinguished participants, please permit me to stand by the existing protocol that has been well established. I am not standing on it. I know your expectation will be that I stand on existing protocols. They said we stand on things in Nigeria, and that's why it is not known. So I want to stand by it so that we can move together. It is my great pleasure to be here on behalf of the President of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Prince Ade Isaac Adedayo. And I will be taking us through in a very brief manner on the impact of transaction taxes on the construction industry in 2022. But for us to appreciate the importance of paying significant attention to the Finance Act 2022 on the construction industry, I will not be that broad. Bode has actually done that, extensively. So I will be very focused on the area that I think FOSI NIQS and CITN can collaborate to make sure that the industry survive on a meaningful basis. And interestingly, the first item on my slides, I was thinking Bode will continue with his bullet points and finish my presentation. The first slide that he projected on tax is actually the starting point of my own discussion, 2.5%. Can the industry survive on that? Even though, yes, it is good because we are coming from 5% to 2.5%. Now, before I proceed here, I want to look at the objectives of FOSI. And I'm very happy that the President actually mentioned, these key objectives of FOSI. Two of those objectives are very key, and that is advocating for members. Advocacy on behalf of members. So it is very important that we look at what are we advocating for in the 2022 Finance Act, which is going to come from the Appropriation Act. The way it works is very simple. We can see that the government is significantly under pressure. So, where will the government be able to get funds to fund its budgets? And we know there are three main sources. The first one is oil. The other one is the non-tax revenue to the government. And the third one is the tax revenue. The one that the government has a lot of influence on is just to sit down and write the law, is the tax. So it's very simple. And I will give us some examples. And with utmost respect to various industries, in my honest view, even those of us in practice that want good business environment, we are not seeing the energy required to really call for industry needs with respect to tax. If we move from this advocacy, because I was told that I have 10 minutes, so I actually have 10 points I want to raise. And that is 1 minute, 1 point. Initially, I have about 20 slides, at least one slide, per one. But I just decided to make it just only one slide. And then we go to the way forward there. Of these 10 points I want to raise, I will raise 5 points which are positive, which are incentives, and those are the ones we have in green at this left-hand side here. The one I put in red are those that are quite challenging. Even those that I have put in green, how green really are they? The first of the green is the reduction of withholding tax rates from 5% to 2.5% for road, bridges, building, power plants, constructions, excluding survey, design, and deliveries. This is as per Section 21 of the Finance Act 2019. The question is, as at the time FOSI was pushing for reduction in withholding tax rates, do we have economic model before we landed on 2.5%? Because my expectation actually was what Body mentioned, 1%. Because I have some of FOSI members as clients. And I know how challenging the withholding tax is from different angles. If we pick the issue of withholding tax alone in the construction industry, it will be sufficient to take all my time. So but we have to really narrow it. How do you charge 2.5% on 100% of revenue when you know that at the end of the day, the net profit after tax is not going to be more than something like 2%? Or even 1.2 or 1.25% in most cases. So I think the Federation really needs to, come together again, have a look at it, and present further, persuasive statistics to the government. Now the question is, if the withholding tax is reduced, does that reduce the genuine revenue to the government? The answer is no. Withholding tax is an advance payment of income tax in line with Section 81 of the Companies Income Tax Act. So it is just to be able to track down those people that you have paid. They will still pay their income tax. So 1% should be sufficient for the industry. But I will leave that there. I just want us during various sessions to have a look at it. And this is where collaboration comes in. Because if we have, the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria with a team from FOSI members and executives can make further powerful representation to the National Assembly and various working sessions to make sure that, look, this industry must survive in a very meaningful way. Now, the second one is the exemption of dividend payments distribution, to real estate investments. This is also good. The challenge there is when you exempt, intercompany, what happens in the books of the receiving company. So we are having challenges. I know your members are having challenges with respect to that. So it should also make it clear in 2022 that, look, when it is exempted at the upper line, it should also be exempted at the lower line. That's when cash can be available, to the industry. Now, the third one I pick is the exemption, from VAT registration and remittance on a company that has less than 25 million turnover. Some entities, are exempted. This bullet point there. Once you have 25 million now, by the Finance Act 2019, you are exempted, from income tax, from VAT, from registration for VAT. So what that means is that those companies will not be required to pay VAT. But when I ask the question, do you have a member with turnover of 25 million naira? I know you will have, but maybe a very low level, not among the 80 that Mr. President mentioned. I don't think so. So where are we when the 25 million is being fixed? 25 million naira? We have to be engaged truly if you want your members to be exempted and benefit from the concept of exemption from VAT. Because the people that are really concerned, I was asking some people at the government side, the inland revenue side, how did you come about 25 million for, especially, let's speak construction industries? I have a number of clients from there. And is this one voucher or one expenditure heading, or are you talking about the turnover for the year? So this is an area that, yes, there is exemption there, but are you going to benefit? I don't really think so. So these are areas that we need to come up with model to persuade the National Assembly that, look, we need to be brought into this benefit. Refund of excess withholding tax within 90 days. Now, the Finance Act Section 15 had modified Section 23 of the Federal Inland Revenue Service Act. Establishment Act. That act requires that you be audited before you can get a refund. And I know some of your members have been struggling, claiming back. Because when 5% was deducted, I think a larger percentage of FOSI members were not actually in a tax-paying position. They are in refund position, practically. So, but you are going to be audited before you can get your money back. But now, Finance Act 2019 had removed that. Again, how to make it operational so that members can benefit is also what we need to think about. Now, exemption from VAT for commercial and then residential rents. I think that's a good one to exempt that. That does not mean that the entities that are collecting the rent will not pay corporate tax. But the exemption from VAT, is a good thing. So these are the good ones. But again, how are FOSI members benefiting from the ones that we say are good? Before we go to the ones that are challenging. Now, I will take on the other 5 that are challenging. The first one is the multiple layers of VAT and withholding tax. I remember when the President FOSI was talking about, members. Members of FOSI are going to get the contract as contractors. But they are still going to subcontract to some other people. For instance, if you are a civil engineer, you probably want to subcontract to electrical engineer, you want to subcontract to, some other people. Now, these people are going to include VAT of 7.5% on their invoices to you. And the one they are including on their invoices, probably, because you are not like buying and selling. So you are going to charge those 7.5% against your own profit. So the cost, the real cost, plus the VAT cost is charged as part of your own cost. When you are also delivering the project, you charge another 7.5 and you pay. Under section 17.1, can you net off being in service industry? These are the details that we need to look at. So of course then you are involved in multiple layers of taxes because you pay on the revenue on one side, you also pay on the cost on one side. So if you ask whether the rate of VAT to the FOSI members is 7.5 in Nigeria, I can tell you very clearly that it's not. Because before you arrive at the effective rate, you have to add the two rates together. So we're talking in the region of almost 15% on the cost, on the revenue. I think that is another area we need to sit down and then look at. How do we eliminate the VAT on input to the industry to the extent that the government will get what it planned to get? What it planned to get is 7.5% on layers of transaction, isn't it? So it's very clear. So if it is 7.5% that the government planned to get, how do we, work together and make sure that that 7.5% that ends up in the account of the government and not more? Because there are unintended consequences of this. And I can give us an example. If you look at the power industry, somebody called me one day and said, as is this industry is having some challenges, listed about 9 different challenges. One of them is transaction taxes. That's why I title these as transaction taxes, not to broaden it so much. When we look at it, I look at it, yes, VAT is one. And as at that time, VAT was 5%. And when I look at it from the gas codes, the gas company will charge 5%, push it to the GenCos. GenCos charge 5%, push it to either NBET, TCN, come back to the discos. Then the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the government say, you are a service industry, so you cannot claim. Put it in your P&L accounts. But when you charge the customers, you must remit the VAT 100% to us. So one of the entities approached us, and we approached the government and we said, look, sir, with utmost respect, this is not right. Otherwise, this industry, power industry, cannot survive by charging 5% VAT to its profit and loss accounts when 100% of the VAT collected is remitted to the government. So if it's collecting 6 naira equivalent on the turnover, cost, if it is 100%, which is 5 plus 6 is around 11 you are collecting, Mr. Government. We were able to demonstrate very clearly, and they saw. That was the genesis of the amendments to the gas, and they did that in Finance Act 2020 by removing, natural gas. So once there is no 5% at the gas level, but there was omission in removing from between the gas costs and then the NBEDs and the discos. So that was what the Finance Act 2021 now did. I now said, yes, okay, I'm fine. So at that point, VAT down the value chain has already been removed for that industry. So the only one that remains is on the output. The 7.5% that is charged must be remitted to the government very quickly. So it's now clear. These are the things that the industry needs to be looking at. If we really want the small profit that we have, if it's not going to be eroded. If you want, but they spoke well about investment. Investment is about return on investment. It's about the rate of returns on investment. The rate of return on investment will be reasonable only if we look at each items of the profit and loss accounts of each of the entities, because every single item on P&L account has transaction taxes on them. There is none unless it's exempted by the law. So we need to sit down and look at each transactions that were charged into the account and look at the taxes that are associated and the impact of those taxes on the net profits. And that is why we can have a reasonable percentage, to the industry that can make it attractive to attract foreign direct investment. Because if it is not encouraging, then people will definitely not want to come. The second item is the stamp duties on all agreements. I don't know where the industry is right now, but I know there are challenges with payment of stamp duties on, on all transactions. This could be very huge. Even if you say you make a profit of 2% on 100% revenue, and somebody is bringing a tax bill of about 10%, so what have you worked for? Because every single transaction on the P&L will attract an agreement. You don't make any payment without an understanding, isn't it? There will be an agreement. The letter of engagement from consultant, for example, is an agreement. So all the transactions qualifies to have an agreement, and therefore will attract stamp duties. So if you look at the value in the P&L accounts, is it something that FOSI members can conveniently pay? And there is no hidden place for a golden fish. All your members, when I opened it, I saw some of my clients, I said, okay, there's nowhere you can hide. Just as Mr. President of FOSI said, FOSI members, in my very honest view, are responsible members. You want to pay your taxes as at when due. But you cannot pay taxes from a zero fund available. You are having a tax bill that is more than your net revenue. How do you pay? Even if you are an angel, you can't go to bank. The bank will ask you what you will use the money for. So the issue of stamp duties is another area that I think FOSI and NIQS need to look into. Withholding tax and VAT on advance payment to contractors. Section 39 of the Finance Act 2019, which is based on Section 78 and 80 of the Companies Income Tax Act 2004, LFN 2004. The challenge with this is now you have to pay VAT and pay withholding tax, on advance invoice as against when you are paying finally before. Before you can cancel a contract, you can cancel an invoice, you can revise an invoice and all those kind of things. So there is room that, okay, when you are raising all those ones, you don't charge all those taxes there. But now you have to charge all those things. These are also areas that advocacy is required. Another one, I've mentioned the denial of the input VAT on the subcontractors is now legislated in Section 17, where you cannot claim VAT as an input to your services. So the product industries, they are able to claim, but FOSI as a service industry is not able to claim. But I think we are in the same market. And we need to look at the matrix of how each person does businesses, to the extent that government will not be collecting double on certain industry and then collect only one on one industry. These are areas that I think we need to, we need to collaborate and then let the government see what it is. Finally, because of time, there are a lot of things that are in the Finance Act 2019, 2020, and then 2021. I'm only trying to flag some issues so as to emphasize the importance of FOSI, NISQ, CITN, partnering to have sessions to review those laws. I have flagged all this in anticipation of what you should be flagging for 2022. Because 2022 is still in draft. As for Finance Act, the Finance Act is still in draft. I don't know how many, members, whether our president or members have a copy of Finance Act 2022. In most cases, I discovered that industry are really, I don't want to say not interested, but are not pushing enough to know the contents of what is going to be passed. And I have examples. For instance, the education sector. Education sector was relaxing, I don't want to say sleeping, when education sector was removed from exemption from income tax in Nigeria. I don't know whether now, I try to Google, I call people in HRMC outside Nigeria, sorry, where is secondary school paying 32% income tax to their government? I can't find any. But the education sector was sleeping when Section 23, 1C was being amended to repeal and remove only education sector from exempted sector. So now, secondary schools, even universities that are private, if you make profit, I call that surplus because they ordinarily are not limited liability companies. Is either they are under incorporated trustees or limited by guarantees, and therefore their account is surplus. But it has been recharacterized by the Federal Inland Revenue Service to say it is profit and therefore you must pay. And then they drafted it, took it to National Assembly. Although some key members said we don't know anything about it, it's the National Assembly that did it. So people, that industry needs to approach the National Assembly and say, no, this one, it shouldn't be that way. So it's the same thing that I want to draw, the attention of the Federation and the NISQ to these germane and very key issues. Our president, CITN, Prince Adedare, we were together at the review of the FRS information circular, because they review information circular at the Transcorp a couple of weeks ago, and he saw the objection I was raising to certain things. If the industry doesn't survive, how do we survive as a country? How do we survive? So it is very important that is not only to make the revenue and control the cost, the tax also must be a reasonable tax, the correct tax that is paid to the government. We are not advocating any reduction in the correct revenue to the government, no. What we are advocating is over-taxation, double taxation, and what I can say like inappropriate taxation. Another industry that was sleeping, I don't like using the word sleeping because it was relaxing when the law was being drafted, was the oil and gas free zone. Oil and gas free zone, what we know of oil and gas free zone is that when you are in that zone, legislative provision pertaining to taxes shall not be applicable to the approved entities within the zone. That is section 18 of the oil and gas free zone, the NEPSA Act. Is there? Section 18 consistently say you are not taxable. By the Finance Act 2020, it just says that section 18 of that act is deleted. Nobody raised any issue. So when we were then telling our clients, you have to go and file returns, he said, no, I can't file returns because we are exempted. You are no longer exempted by Finance Act 2020. Where is it? We already sent, a tax alert. You didn't read it. They said if you want to deal with an African, put a major thing in writing and send it to that person. He will not read it. I call on FOSI members and NIQS to please read the 2022 Finance Act very well before it is passed. I thank you very much for the time given to me.
Thank you very, very much, sir. Thank you. Beautiful presentation. All right. It's been really a call to action, and I want the professional bodies, particularly in the built environment, to come together so we can go. All right. Very quickly, we're going to go to just take questions from here so that Mr. Bode and Augusto and the speaker that just finished can ask. Chief Architect Able. Thank you for joining us also. You're welcome. And of course, we have with us a representative of the... Ladies and gentlemen, I have, very quickly, anybody have questions for Mr. Augusto? You have a question for Mr. Augusto and of course Alaji Alatoye, who just spoke. They can raise their hand, not raise physically, right? They can indicate. Online as well. Please call my attention to it. So I have 1, 2. Physically here, number 3. Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Please.
My name is Mohammed Kabir Olaiwola. I'm a member of NIQS, a fellow. My question goes direct to the tax reform that we discussed. As we all know that tax are paid after deduction has been made. It will even be deducted before you are given your balance. And it is when accounts are audited that you'll be able to know whether you are in the tax category of less than 25 million or otherwise gross income. And the tax authority in this country are alpha and omega. You are their mercy by the time you want a tax clearance. They will just subject you to whatever they want, and you are forced to write undertaking that you will pay so amount of money. Now you realize that this amount of money, you are ought to be exempted. Right and right. At that particular point, you cannot change your business. You cannot vest and say, I don't want to pay again, I'm going to buy and sell it, or whatever. Our 30 years experience otherwise is down the drain. So what do you do in getting your tax reform and making sure you continue the following year with the gap of the delay that is being caused by our tax authority? Then the issue of the 2.5% that ought to be paid, now that we are paying more than that, you will have been deducted by whatever percentage they want. They give you the balance. And then you realize that you are not supposed to be within the gap of the deductions. And you just have to wait until the end of the year. So in which way can we stay out of this imbroglio? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that question. Mr. Agusi, second question.
Yes. I work with Mr. Delaney. Was during his presentation. And as it relates to investors doing business in Nigeria, now let me narrow it to, the investors in the construction industry. Now, during his presentation, he made it clear to us that there is this volatility now on Naira to dollar. And that these two currencies fluctuate, with
impacted globally. The energy cost has gone up all over the world. Even though Nigeria is supposed to be a major beneficiary, but we all know that in recent times we had cries that Nigeria is producing about 90% of oil production. So it means Nigeria has been losing about 90% of revenue. And that is the revenue that is supposed to come back to the budget. So if we are not able to stem the loss of the oil production, obviously that will definitely impact on the cash that we are available to fund our budget. Ordinarily, we would have shouted EP in the sense that because of the increase in crude oil prices, that our revenue should also improve significantly. There should be more cash available to finance the budget. Like I said, if we are not able to meet our production quota, even as our last year, the quota that we had from OPEC were not able to meet because of these losses in the production line. So if we are not able to meet even the so-called increases in crude oil prices that should have benefited us, will also be a loss. That's on one side. On the other side, unfortunately, is also that means we also have higher cost of the fuel subsidy. And this is money channel and put into to finance the budget, but rather it's being used to fund the subsidy. And Nigeria's challenge in terms of infrastructure. Government is making all of us know the challenge we had in the last few months, 2 months, regarding our power, the collapse of the grid and all of that. And without power, how can you produce? And part of the challenge now is that you're challenging power that people are relying on because of the high cost of distribution and because of the job. It has also made it possible for people to effectively engage in something.
Now, 4.5 trillion capital expenditure projected. Yes, we use it carefully. We use the word carefully because we know that sometimes the releases are not up to what they project in the Appropriation Act. Considering the infrastructure deficits that we have in this country, what kind of relief do you think 4.5 trillion provision, if at all released, will actually give?
Like I said earlier, if government can find the cash backing for the 4.5 trillion, if at all, I mean, like they said, a drop in erosion is still simple. I mean, if you have a patch or arid ground, and then you have a rainfall, even if it's only 1 millimeter, the patch ground will know that yes, there's a rainfall and they will have some relief. But the issue now will the government be able to find the requisite cash for that?
Now,
if the government is able to, definitely do something.
As a player, when you were talking about the challenges, I was thinking you would talk about the procurement processes. Because procurement process used to be one of the major impediments in the whole process. How much impediment does the procurement process, as we have it today, pose to the players?
When people talk about procurement processes, yes, the procurement process has its own impediment, because they have human beings But you need to also ask yourself, why are there impediments in the process? Obviously, some people are trying to sabotage the system. That's still goes strong. Our attitude as a people. Everybody sits and criticizes government, everybody talks about corruption. Like people will say, when it doesn't benefit. But when it benefits, everybody thinks it's okay. So when you talk about the procurement processes and the impediment, I'm not sure that is too much. But then, aside from government, I think what is important is one of the reasons why the government can create the enabling and environment for the private sector to come in and invest. In the private sector, their own procurement process is straightforward and is neater. If you have the private sector come out, because in other parts of the world, sometimes you find it's the private sector that comes and do the investments, the construction. But here in Nigeria, because of the way we have been, and because the government has not provided the right environment, and you can hear about the taxes that probably government will forgo by enable some other players to come in. There are areas of even infrastructure that you can find private sector to come in and invest. For instance, look at when the terminal buildings in Lagos were to regularize to say, and you have the private sector participant going to build the MM2 domestic terminal. These are the kind of private sector investments. You can get private players, private sector players coming in to even build roads and charge tolls. But for them to do that, of course, the environment has to be nice in terms of the taxation, in terms of access to credit.
My colleague.
Okay, sir.
Like you will have heard from some of the experts. Sometimes, unfortunately, the way the taxation is structured, you find that the players have to pay more than what is actually stipulated. For instance, now the is supposed to be a illustration where the major player uses some of the. For instance, you have a supplier. The supplier is starting with 7.5% on the price of the supplier. And then you have the who also pay better than the and then to pay 7.5 so basically you are paying 7.5 on the materials. Now you are paying 7.5 on the entire cost. So it's almost 50. They're not 50. But it makes almost 50. Between 12 and 50%. That's what the government is.
Okay, but in that case, what do you want to achieve with this roundtable? What do you want this government?
There are two major objectives. One, bringing all the players. Let us identify our problems. Let us look for areas where we can engage on how these problems are solved. And that's why we're talking about the taxation. Now this is a major problem for all of us. How do we engage the legislators? So the drafting the finance bill 2023 as a way we can look at what has been put in and what we can reduce. Because the bottom line is that the way the sector is right now, given the inflation, just had what LGC and we are buying diesel for but the honest truth is that is your cost. And that will now be your profit that you reduce. If you reduce profit and then you are paying such high tax, obviously it's like most of the farms will be run at loss. Then before you know what is happening, farms will disobey workers. Then the employment rate. Actually, Nigerian construction industry is the major employer of the construction services. So people look at And of course, the attitude of supply chain, because apart from workers that are weak, just talk about suppliers, people who come in and supply cement, people who come in and supply cement to gravel, and then you have those people and those women who come in and sell on canteens, for the workers. So with all those people, you find that for every construction company that closes, so many homes are controlled.
In other words, you are not going to address this issue of equality because of this
well, look for the way, because to be honest with you, like I said, what I say, it's not something government has power to control. It's as a result of the situation because it's a global issue. In all parts of the world, that's why everybody is chatting about the cost of energy. If you go to the UK now, they will tell you how much they are paying for car, how much they are paying for fuel. So it's not something that is only within the control of the government. And because it also suggests that governments should do subsidy. Because already the subsidy on petrol, they are using quite a huge sum of money that will have been pumped into infrastructure development. So we are really concerned that we don't want that to happen. So the other way, like I said, yes, how do we control? How do all these players, not them come in their own different platform. But let's first get to the platform. And it's supposed to be the platform for all the players to contribute. That's why we are coming. We also expected some people from the players and others. So it's not only just the consultants and the contractors, but also some of the other players. The federal government is not major engaging most consultants as well as contractors. They are also so the idea is for us to look at what are the challenges, how do we get this to benefit everybody as well as contractors.
Looking at the executive order about maintaining and
over the years, we developed that mentality of neglecting those assets such that even another 20 years they become so obsolete that we cannot really. But ordinary human does, replacing the rocks, making sure that they close properly, they have more carbon materials. Painting so that the building still continues to maintain and increases in value. These are some things that they must be to the private sector. You go into some residential houses, private houses, and you find out that maybe since the houses were built, they must have a lot of things. So we need, and I think the government taking the lead, that the private sector also doing that, to improve facilities.
I'm looking at inflation, I would actually mention right inside. Narrowing this down to building cost of building materials is actually on the high side.
See this as temporary. Why I say temporary is that you don't expect that the situation will improve. At a certain point in time, we expect that the solution will be found. And then to a certain level, I mean, it's just like when we had COVID. COVID also passed. Unfortunately, when we were just getting out of COVID, it was when this inflation of the upgrade came and through every materials. That's the problem. But like I said, as you be careful in suggesting permanent solution for temporary. Because once that enterprise solution is in progress.
Thank you so much.
Emmanuel Kaswike, the President, Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers.
Okay, so what exactly are we doing here today?
Well, it's like bringing professionals in the construction industry together under one roof for us to discuss the issue of Appropriation. Now, what the NIQS and the FOSI have done is to look at, now that we have the Appropriation of what impact will it cause on the construction industry, and that is a very good idea. So as ancestors of yours and Valor, we felt that it is very crucial, very critical for us to participate, to put our own opinion, to put our own ideas to government, and to ensure that the Appropriation Act that the President has signed is actually going to work. And if it's going to work, what impact will it be on the construction industry? And remember that construction industry is one of the sectors that can actually reject the economy. So what we are doing here today is to brainstorm and see how the Appropriation Act can be implemented to the benefit of Nigerians, especially the construction industry.
As the President of the year, we would want to know how this improve the housing sector, especially the real estate sector in Nigeria.
Yes, if you see the budget that has been signed into, you find out that we have a lot to do. Now, for us as testers of loss and value, we know that government cannot do it alone. So what we are advocating for is for private public partnership, where the government will provide an enabling environment for the private sector to contribute to the economy of Nigeria, especially in the housing sector. It is not possible for the government to provide the housing need of Nigerians, and the only way for us to be able to reduce the deficit is for us to allow the private sector to invest in real estate and the housing sector. That will enable the government to actually achieve much on their own. Now, the budget have been budgeted for Ministry of Works and Housing, where we are, might not be enough to even provide the infrastructure. So they need the private sector to do that, and that is one of the things that we are discussing here, that we need the private sector to also partner with the government for us to be able to ensure that we have more houses and more infrastructure in the country. And if that is done, it's going to help to reject the economy, it's going to help to reduce the number of houses that we need, because we all know that we have housing deficit in Nigeria. And that is also an opportunity for investors, especially those who want to invest in real estate. It's an opportunity for us to invest in real estate because we have enough opportunities in the real estate sector. So we are here to brainstorm, and I'm sure that at the end of this program, the participants will come up with a communique that will.
Now, talking about investors, is the environment being conducive enough for investors to come in? So what should the players now, the government, policy makers, what should they do to investors?
That is one of the things we are discussing, because the environment is not actually conducive.
Okay.
Now, they are, like one of the bank presenters said, you have taxation on real estate sector. So what we are asking for is that, is it possible for us to actually reduce the tax burden on real estate, so that at the end of the day, the investors will be able to also benefit from that sector. Now, most of the people that are into real estate, in fact, one of the presenters said that our profit is being taxed instead of surplus. They are treating our surplus as profit, which is wrong. This is an organization that is trying to survive. So what we are advocating for is that let there be an environment where people are willing to invest. And one of the things that government should actually do is to actually look at tax holiday and also try as much as possible to reduce the cost of building materials. That will help us to increase the number of houses that we supply.
Well, speaking about housing deficit, which you mentioned, how well, if you're looking at the cost of building materials in the country?
All right, you were trying to talk about some of the challenges facing the sector, especially referring to the recent inflation of the construction resources.
The first question that we got is
the effect of inflation on the cost.
Thank you. You know, our normal contracts take time. The road project takes typically, let's say, 3 years in writing the contracts, but in reality, in Nigeria, it takes between 5 to 10 years for major projects. So it is part of the contract that if there is a change in some basic prices, that the client will now pay back to the contractor. This is put in place so that the contractor will not unnecessarily assume any inflationary effect and charge it to the client. So it's to protect both parties. Now, the current inflation in the cost of cement, last 2 years, and of recent, the cost of diesel has doubled, the cost of explosive materials that has almost tripled because of the lack of logistics by from Ukraine to other parts of the world, and the restrictions on the use of explosives because of the security challenges that we have. And many other costs, let's say bitumen as well, is related to oil and gas prices. So in a normal contract, this figure is put at 5%. Now what we are seeing in the industry is that up to 25% is needed for some ongoing projects that have been issued, let's say, in the last 5, 8, or 10 years. Some of our members have projects that have been ongoing for more than 10 years. So the amount of money that is provided for this variation, which is only given to the contractor when there is an increase in price, the 5% is no more enough. And for each contract, some of these major contracts, the procedure of changing this provision is taking a lot of time. So we are looking for the government to look at among the key ministries, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Agriculture, let's say SCTA, those that are doing such long-term contracts or contracts that take a while, to look at a holistic approach to expand this variation of price provision so that each contractor will not have to go through a month, let's say 2-3 months of going to the Bureau of Public Procurement and up to FEC for such contracts. It will help to have a global approval for this variation price so that projects will not be
Some of the reasons why we experience this inflation are not within our control. Some of them are really not the economical. This happens to us as a player in this industry. Will the current situation have, if it exists, continue to experience this inflation? What effect will it have on existing projects that have already been awarded?
The effect will be that more money will have to be allocated. So you will likely be hearing that contracts have been adjusted upwards without increasing the scope, and also likely delays the project. Because even though government is having to allocate more money to our sector, let's see what 1 billion is able to do in 2020 likely need maybe up to 1.4 billion to have the same number of kilometers just because of such increase. So we hope that the amount of money government is increasing to make available for projects will not be diminished by such inflationary effect for the basic materials. Thank you very much.
QS Aliu Moritana, the Executive Secretary, FCDA, ably represented by QS Abdulaziz Salman, permit me to stand or to align His Excellency Babatunde Raji Fasola, SAA. It is my pleasure and honor to be invited as a special guest of honor and to declare open the business round table organized by the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, NIQS, and the Federation of Construction Industry, FOSI, that is taking place here today. I want to commend the leadership of the two bodies for this great collaboration and discussing the Appropriation Act 2022. Let me state that the interests of the construction industry players in the Appropriation Act 2022 cannot be overemphasized. In a document that does not only show details of government expected revenue and expenditure, but gives direction of government policies, programs, and spending priorities in the financial year. it is pertinent to reiterate that the capital component of our annual budget has increased progressively since the inception of this administration, and 2022 budget of 17.1 trillion has 5.4 trillion as its capital component, which represents 32% of the budget, compared to less than 700 billion naira capital component of 2015 budget. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to inform this meeting that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari CFR is well abreast of the contributions of the construction industry to the economy, gross domestic product, and the multiplier effect of judicious implementation of capital budgets as it engender employment and revitalization of national economy. Because of the desired development envisaged and the urgency to meet up with infrastructural needs of the nation, government has addressed specific bottlenecks to the smooth implementation of budgets through issuance of relevant executive orders, increment of advance payment from 15% to a maximum of 30%. And drastic reduction of the procurement period to ensure quick delivery of dividend of democracy and to close the infrastructural gap in record time. At this juncture, I would like to congratulate the President of Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyor and that of the Federation of Construction Industry for organizing this event. I join you not to end the conversation here today, but to follow up the procurement and implementation of the capital projects to ensure they achieve the expected goals and purposes. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore my honor and pleasure to declare open the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyor Federation of Construction Industry Business Roundtable on the Appropriation Act 2022. And I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Secretary. Thank you, sir, for declaring the roundtable open. And of course, to kick off the roundtable, distinguished and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome upstage here a past president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors and the current president of the Quantity Surveyors Registration Board of Nigeria, our NIQS Ali, who is going to be the moderator of this very discussion. Please, a round of applause for him as he come on the stage. So what we're doing there, we're fulfilling to this purpose. You know, it was not in the book, so I didn't see it, according to Alaji Aziz. So now, that will jumpstart the actual discourse, I believe. And please a round of applause for him.
I don't think you can say enough. I mean, this is beautiful. The whole idea is the president of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, president of, I say there is construction today. Gentlemen, I think we're in trouble. Hashtag crisis in construction. Gentlemen, we're living in high. Look, in the 60s, we had NEDO. NEDO was the National Economic Development Organization in Britain. It was the first time that Britain came into a crisis. And what did they attempt to do? They called themselves together. Gentlemen, look, what is happening to national economic planning? And they therefore formed various committees in various departments or sectors of industry to look at, gentlemen, what's happening in your industry. Now look, the first report in construction industry was in 1945, the Samuel report. In the 60s, the Powell report, the Wood report, the Egon report, the Lancam report. In 2013, there was Construction 2025. The government of Britain put together, hey gentlemen, look, what is going to happen to this industry in 2025? You know, the sad thing in Nigeria is this. The government is the biggest buyer of construction products, but it doesn't care. It doesn't care. It's government's project. It is not even worried that this industry is not performing. I was part of a government, oh my goodness, I got 5 minutes. I was part of a government thing to go around. They called it the Project Assessment Committee, and we were going all around looking at projects. There were many projects started before I started school, and today they're still there. Look, the ratio of start to finish in our industry, only God knows what it will look like. As it affects me in practice, I cannot hire a quantity surveyor and take him through that first phone call. Hey, we got a hotel to build 40 rooms. You give an estimate. Then we go into documentation. Then you go into award. Then you hand over site. Then you finish. And then you hand over. How many of us see construction from start to finish? Gentlemen, we are in trouble. And we should, I think there's cause for worry if we're to speak of the outlook for construction today. I think we're in dire straits. Tying my submission to one of the government objectives, he talked about de-risking the enterprise environment. And I think this is one where, if you look at the budget, one of the major aims is to de-risk enterprise environment. I think construction enterprise today is in jeopardy. And I think more than anything else, this idea of coming together, the first time, can you believe it? Look, we are all running construction contracts, standard forms of contract. It is not a product of FOSI, NIQS, the architect, and so on and so forth. Some people just sit together and write one form of contract, amend what they like, and we're all supposed to abide with it. You don't pay me, I can't say anything. That whole judicial precedent in the UK, where interest on old debt is not, actionable, we import it here. But the kind of regularity there, the kind of indexing that goes on there, whereby you give me a contract, the index today is 305, the next time you are paying me is 310, I do 310 about 305, and you pay me my inflation. It is not here. What happened to us? How did we lose our voice? Is it because we are subordinated to a political system that sees our industry as nothing else but to finance their political activities? What has happened to us, gentlemen? We live a lie. If government says it wants to de-risk enterprise environment, I think construction ranks as one of the first whose enterprise environment needs de-risking. Gentlemen, we need to speak to government about payment. Why is it that it is okay not to pay me? Why? And we accept it. Do you know you are old, nobody pays you. When they want to start 2 years' time, you are called back and you're supposed to go there. The governor goes there and threatens you to revoke your contract. Doesn't care that you had deposits, nobody was paid. Do you know what I mean? Body Augusto spoke about national indexing. Gentlemen, this is time to come together to form national indexing. It is not about FOSI publishing its own indices, NIQS publishing its own indices, some other maybe merchants group publishing its own. No. Let's come together and get government involvement. We are going to agree that the index when you gave me this contract was so much. Today, it is now this. you ain't going to pay me what you owed me the last time. Then, and if you owe me money, gentlemen, look, you pay my interest because you drive me out of business. I borrowed this money. Augusto was saying we are lucky because we work with clients' money and so on and so on and so forth. But gentlemen, look, the truth is that banks are not willing to lend you money. I don't get preferential. I borrow at 26% base before you add your comfort fees, arrangement fees. I'm borrowing at 30%. Gentlemen, look, we cannot continue like this. We must speak. This brilliant idea that, gentlemen, look, alone speaking, nobody will hear us. Gentlemen, congratulations, and to all those who found it worthy, leading other professional groups, this must not end. Government just signed Executive Order 11. I want to take this opportunity to go into theory. You know, government comes out as saying it is doing infrastructure, therefore massive employment. No! Construction divides into three. 1, infrastructure and engineering. 2, building. 3, repair and maintenance. The most labor-intensive aspect of construction is repair and maintenance. If you spend ₦1 million doing a bridge, look, okay, so if I want to do a bridge, so what do? I don't know whether I need a payloader, I need some concreting. How many people are you going to see? There was this time the minister was jumping about, hey, we're going to do the Abuja new runway, so 30 billion is going to employ people. Whenever they showed the picture on TV, all you saw were rollers, asphalting machine. How many people did you employ with 30? Gentlemen, let's begin to put forward theory. Let policy be informed by theory. When you spend on infrastructure, what you are doing is finding finding subsidies for production, i.e., you plant something in Benue State, you are taking it to Lagos, let your cost, facilitate that in goods and services, you understand? But not necessarily employment. Great idea to have infrastructure, but be clear. If you're talking of massive intervention in unemployment, it is building and repair and maintenance. Thank you very much. Now look, I'm not going to spend time here. Just so much has been said, brilliant. The issue of data and research. Up until today, I've never seen a census of production in Nigeria. I've never seen a statistical presentation. Look, FOSI has 80 members. But construction industry, I'm sure there are more than 5,000 contracting firms. Who has gone around to enumerate them? You know, part of this government's agenda is to boost value addition locally. But do you know, nobody has ever looked at the building materials sector to formulate any policies regarding organizing it, knowing the linkages that, look, if you say you want to deliver so many houses this year, how much of paint, how much of tiles, how much of those things that should form input, do they produce them here? So you can see a situation. I tell you one theory, it's called the vicious circle theory. The vicious circle theory in construction development goes as this. An improvement in one sector sets into motion a compensating worsening in the overall. That means, you go about building all these houses, but what happens? Everybody is importing all the things from China, so your balance of payment is suffering. Look at roads. You tell me you want to do 1,000 kilometers of road, and you are quiet on asphalt. I know that in Kaduna Refinery, one of the units is to provide asphalt, but till today it has not worked for the last 20 years. Nobody is worried. And you want to expand delivery of roads. So these are the whole idea of input-output analysis, a sectorial look into construction, and for crying out loud, more attention. Mr. President, welcome. This must not stop. This must not stop. I don't know why they don't want to listen to us. Do you know, sometimes they don't really want this industry to get its act together. They enjoy the way it is. But we are the ones suffering. Don't let us bankrupt us. Thank you very much.
Nothing more can be added for today's intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome QS Parks visit for his intervention quickly. Thank you. A round of applause for him.
Spoken about here has a bearing on cost. And you know what? Nobody does any costing. Not in government, anyway. And I spent almost 21 years in government trying to build capacity in that area, costing of physical and social infrastructure projects. It's an impossible task. Why my colleagues spend most of their time fighting who is going to cost what. Who is going to cost engineering projects? Who is going to cost building projects? Who is more qualified to cost engineering or building projects? That's not the issue. The issue is get the government to cost projects. Because success criteria, one of the success criteria of a project is cost, and that's the beginning and the end. That's the lifeblood. Abandoned projects. When I was in budget office, we did a study. Over 6,000 abandoned projects worth about 16 billion abandoned. Why? Poor costing, mostly. And look, the main thing that you need to do is go back to planning. Government is doing that now. We lost that some few years ago. We were no more planning. And the main thing about planning is that costing is the main issue there. Why is it that there has been a gap between policy, plans, and budget? You need to cost your policies, you need to cost your plan, you need to cost your budget, because the policy informs the plan informs the budget. Where are the figures? The figures that we get in annual budget, especially the capital budget, where do they come from? Are they guesstimates? Are they based on scientific analysis of data? In QS, we were taught that the success of any project must rest on three things: your initial cost estimate, your contract sum, the final account. They must come close together, or if there is a major difference, you have to account for it. Why is there the difference? Same thing applies here. Your policy, the policy makers, the politicians say, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. That's a dream, that's a wish list. It only becomes concrete when you are able to prioritize that wish list or the list of needs by costing. Once you cost, you know which one is more important and which one you can afford. Then you put it in your plan. Then you now, a long-term plan, take say 10 years, you now break that down into your medium-term plan. So the long-term plan informs your medium-term plan. Now, you need to now do your budget so that your medium-term plan informs your budget. So all the three, policy, plan, budget, are linked by the costing. So if there is no costing, there's a breakdown in the chain, because you need resources to get to wherever you're going to make that journey. Everybody was talking about inflation, about exchange risk. All those risks can be managed by proper costing, and Bode August captured all those risks very well. So we need to go back to costing. I'm happy that the distinguished assembly here is in a position to advocate and make sure that capacity is built within the ministry, departments and agencies to do costing of fiscal and social infrastructure, because that capacity truly is like, it's not for lack of effort, because I've been there, we've made all the efforts, but it's difficult. And you may recall that in the past there was this department of PRS, Planning, Research and Statistics. They used to do that. It's no more there. So most of part of the advocacy has to come, from the demand from the public, from the users of these services, so that the proper thing can be done. So that if those departments are brought back, the executive order level is going to bring a department of maintenance, which is very good. But I think this other one still has to come back. This one that does with planning, research and statistics, whereby people were specially put there who are responsible for planning and who could gather data and put a proper plan together and a proper budget together, especially relating to the social and fiscal infrastructure. The issue of recurrent is straightforward. They know how much salaries they are being paid. It's very straightforward. But this other issue, which is just about 2022 budget is about 35%, but it's significant because that's the one that has to do with impact on people's lives, impact on the economy mostly. So I implore you all to try and step up advocacy. I know in one of the small African countries, it's legislated that for the long-term plan, you must do this, you must do this, you must do that. And projects and programs that are in the budget must be implemented. It was put as a law, and it was put as, even in the Constitution, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of these small southern African countries, Malawi, legislated and is put, 30-year plan is put in their constitution. So steadily they are implementing. So I hope we can borrow a leaf from that and look at this issue seriously. Thank you very much.
I do hope that with these few words of ours, we're able to convince and not confuse that collaboration is the way to go. And right now, please, in the next 30, 45 minutes thereabout, we're going to wrap up the whole session today. And to kickstart that will be our moderator. Once again, please, a round of applause for QF Talali as they come up the stage. Thank you.
To the point. We've had experts speak, those from the finance side, and the president of FOSI and NIQS, and president of NIGP, president of NI, to join us here. We'll pick up the discussions, we'll make a few points, and if there are interventions from the floor, we'll have them. We'll try and make it as short as possible. And the intention is that at the end of the roundtable, we have rapporteurs. We should be able to put together some take home. And I think also lay the background to our future actions and subsequent roundtables in this matter. Ordinarily, we should have been discussing before the budget, so as to influence what will come as it will affect the industry. Or immediately after the presentation. But I want to make a point before we start the roundtable. What were the major problems? And from my experience, I was one on the side of government. Is that when we talk about annual budgets, you find that the way it is prepared leaves much to be desired. The public servants, and I know there are public servants here, will take the previous year's budget, add some percentages or deduct some percentages, and then present it for the year. I had one singular misfortune that I mentioned in one of our gatherings, our concepts gathering, when we were discussing the Procurement Act. We took over a project in 1991. I was part of the consultants of the project. That was not the status. It was RECA that was handling the project. It's a down project in the United States. And I think Olaga will make some information when the project started before he was in school. We employed Consulate, who was in the project. That was 1990, 91. What to call the story, the project is still on. That guy got to the project site. He got married there. His son is now a graduate. Fortunately, he's not working there elsewhere. So this is the kind of predicament that our budgetary system has produced. We have people who sit down, policymakers and the civil servants who sit down and just put some benchmarks, and then we have the excess budget. And that's why we have number of abundant projects that are completed. So I think this interaction or this collaboration should be able to come up with something that will guide governments, at least to be able to have a responsible, output to our national development. So I think can the presidents come on, please? The NIQS president, OC president, NITP, NIA, Nigerian Institute of Asset Values and CRM. And we've also had some interventions from Ola. Let me start with the president of the FOSI to just from what we gathered today, give us a little roundup, and then we move to the others. Let's get some comments in a few minutes each, and then we can now open the for discussion.
Thank you very much. I think for FOSI members, this gathering has really allowed us to hear our problems from the professionals within the industry. We have been living it already. So it's like going to the doctor, and then the doctor will now tell you exactly what is wrong with you, while you are the one that is actually feeling the pains. Last week, we had a meeting with we have the advocacy committee, along with the directors of finances of our member companies. And it was like an emergency meeting to call our attention to exactly what we are discussing now. Because if care is not taken, construction industry will no longer be sustainable. We will likely be out of business. We can no longer work with existing contract conditions and the inflationary and other bureaucratic hurdles of doing business. Government is willing, I know, in terms of ease of doing business, because they always talk about it. But when it comes to actually implementing such, it is quite difficult. The simplest example is the issue of timing. For you to raise a certificate, even when money is available, for example, in terms of, let's say, sukuk financing, the money has been raised for months. However, because of the bureaucratic hurdles from one table to the next, we are still expecting the releases, and this is attributed to budget of 2021 that has already passed. They have not even started the raising the funds for 2022. So this gathering has given FOSI an opportunity to go to government as an industry and to go to the public, because government is also the public. The public should be aware that when they hear about cost of projects being increased, that these are the reasons. Had it been all our projects have been funded in the last 10 or so years, we wouldn't have been talking about this now. We'll be talking about other projects, but not the projects that we are still on 10 years in the organizations. So if we speak about our problems, people will tend to think, okay, because your profits are not as high. But going as an industry is a cry for help to keep the industry alive. Otherwise, construction will not be something that we will encourage other businessmen or investors to go into. Many bankers, there was a bank, one of our biggest banks in Nigeria, the MD categorically told us that any government contract is high risk and they are not willing to lend money based on even certified works by our ministry. So government needs to look into this so that maybe as an industry we should be able to take our certificates to CBN to get financing. Something like that, because the film industry, aviation industry, they all receive some kind of intervention one way or the other during or before, after COVID. There is nothing for construction. They said there is something for infrastructure, but whenever there is the construction is under infrastructure, we are always put aside. Likely other major investors will benefit, but not construction companies or related participants. This is what I can say for now. Thank you very much.
Looking at it, sometimes there's this feeling that when you award contract to a company, you're doing them a favor. And I think that concept has to be erased first. The construction companies are giving services, and it's not a favor when you give a company some contracts. There was a time we were talking about payment bonds. When you did a contract, you have to go and give performance bond, this bond and that bond. I think in this kind of forum, we can think and articulate a position where we can have payment bonds, where when you enter an agreement with government, just to give a performance bond, they should also give a payment bond that you can cash on when the time matters. This is something that we can look for discussion. But maybe I would now move to the President. And maybe we can hear something from what you have picked from the discussion and some ideas you may have come with to support this discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I'd like to seize this opportunity to thank and congratulate my brother president, the president of the Nigeria Institute of Quantity Surveyors, for putting this together and for even insisting that the rest of us must be here. I was in Abuja from Tuesday to Saturday last week. I went to Calabar and he reminded me that I had to be here today. So I had to come in yesterday. So what am I trying to say? This level of integration and cooperation between or amongst professional colleagues in the built environment is very necessary to take us out of some of these problems that have plagued our industry, and to also serve as one united voice in putting a lot of these things together. I listened to the two presentations, and something struck me. Number one, it was the deep knowledge gap between professionals in this industry and affairs that have to do with finance and allocation of resources to our industry. A lot of the things that I heard, I told myself, I'm glad I was here. And we need to work further on a lot of the things that have been mentioned here. Number one is that this forum, I think, should be, I don't know if it's annual or if it's just oh, this is the first. Yes, I think it should be something that should come up a little early in the year, or as soon as the budget is released. Because these days, budgets are released in December or thereabout. And we should, as a group, and when I say a group, I mean the professional bodies, even if the quantity surveyors have to lead because it has to do with money, and I often say that quantity surveyors are better businessmen than the rest of us in the industry because they deal with money. So that as an industry, we can start analyzing government's commitment and policies that have to do with our industry. How much of the budget goes into the construction industry? What are the impediments to the proper functioning of the construction industry? And what are those things we can suggest to government to enable the industry thrive? Somebody mentioned the issue of even materials. What is our materials policy as a nation? Would we continue in this culture of importing everything we need for the industry? What is the timetable or the blueprint for ensuring that at a certain timeline we should be able to get a certain percentage of our building materials produced locally? No country survives when most of its components in the building industry have to be imported. I don't have statistics, but you can be sure that in Nigeria of today, I will not be wrong if I say up to 90% of the elements of buildings have to be imported. Even the ones that are produced locally, the machines to produce them have to come from outside this country. And that creates a heavy burden and on not only availability, but also on the cost. We complain of the volatile nature of the dollar and other currencies to the naira, and that is only because most of the materials that we use in the industry have to be imported from outside. So I would go back to my association and let them know that, look, architects, you need to be involved in the financing or in the finances that go into the industry. If you leave it to others, when they are doing the discussions, you're not there, and they can slam anything against your industry, and all you have to do is to complain and complain. I saw in the presentation that design is not part of the services that for which withholding tax has been reduced. I asked myself, why? Are we not also part of the cost elements that go into this, whatever concessions have been given to those in the construction, in the actual construction? After all, is a team. But then when you are not at the table, when these matters are being discussed, chances are that nobody will listen. Nobody will fight your battles for you. And that is why I said as the construction industry professional group, we must come to a roundtable like this before or after the budget has been announced and analyze it and make a joint presentation to government that, look, for this sector to develop, we need to do X, Y, Z. And these policies even go as far as the manpower. I always say that any forum that I'm at, that our industry has a capacity issue, capacity in terms of the workforce. Our industry is, I always say that it's top heavy. You have professionals like you and I at the top, And if you want to gather masons or carpenters, you can't see because there's no certification of that trade level. And so what you have a situation where somebody is a laborer today and tomorrow he buys a trowel and he shows up at the site and says he's a mason. Our technical education needs to come up to speed to meet up with the demands of this industry. And we need to make that point to government that, look, we have a serious capacity issue which we should also take care of. Now, this morning, I was a guest at NTA Live this morning, and they were discussing Executive Order 11. And of course, as professionals, we try to look at opportunities and commend government of how good the policy is and all of that. But for the average layman on the street, the moderator asked, is it for want of allocation of monies? What is new in Executive Order 11? Every time you look at the budget, if you go to the details, you discover that huge sums of money are allocated for maintenance. What happens to these monies? What is new in this new executive order? And would it just be business as usual? Again, as a professional group, we need to analyze that policy and see how, if government is a policy of government, we need to see how we can ensure that that policy doesn't go the way of other policies that have been raised in the past. Then let me just end with this other point. Now, there's a need for us to domesticate a lot of our processes and procedures, even our standard form of contract. We copied these things from outside the shores of this country, and it's becoming obvious that they are not in tandem with the realities of our environment. Every policy and every law exists within an environmental context. And so what works in location A may not work in location B. And so as an industry, we also have to sit down and look at some of the standard forms of contract that we've been used to over the years and see how we can rejig them to be in consonance with the realities of our industry. A lot of people talked about the issues of volatile inflation, talked of issues of fluctuations, talked of issues of even the currency. And so we need to include in our contract clauses and provisions to domesticate these things in tandem with what is available in our client. So I think I would yield the mic at this point to other speakers to also make their points before I become another speaker.
Thank you very much. Now let's listen to Xavier Sambalos.
Thank you very much, moderator. First, let me apologize that as at the time you called my name, I was not inside the hall. If you look from my immediate right to the extreme, they are all well made. You can see how big and how eloquent they are looking. So for those of us who are young ones, we are just waiting. So I went outside to answer your call to see whether I can get small money that will take me back to Port Harcourt. So I'm very sorry, Mr. Moderator. No, there will be no sharing because the 2% is too high. Well, first, let me congratulate my brother presidents that organized this roundtable discussion. First, I want to say that we are in a good place discussing these issues. I think that we should try as much as possible to do it earlier before the bill is assent by the president, so that as professional bodies as professionals, will be able to make our input, maybe during the public hearing or during the presentation. Now, why I'm saying so is because if the bill has been sent by Mr. President, do we have much to do when it has been sent? If it is in the process, can we actually influence things? The answer is yes. And that is where one of the speakers said what I like, because in most of the gatherings, I tell people that we are professionals, yes. We are also politicians by making. If we leave this matter in the hands of our brother politicians, in quote, we will not get anywhere. We can discuss this matter from now till tomorrow. If we don't have a body within us that will lobby whatever decision we are going to take, it's not going to take us anywhere. Because those people have already determined what they want to do and how they want to do it. And like somebody said, they are only keeping these things from us because they wouldn't want us to know what they are doing. But because we know what we want to do and how we want to contribute to the development of our economy, and that is our responsibility as professionals, we need to act and ensure that they do not use their political language to confuse us. Now, what we need to do is to use our own professional language to let them know what they should do and how they should do it. And that's where I think that we need to work hard. We need to try as much as possible to ensure that we do not just sit as professionals and allow those who call themselves politicians dictate all the time how the economy should be run. That's number one. Number two is that I think as professionals in the construction industry, we should not also allow things to go the way it should go without contributing our own quotas. Now, somebody talked about building materials and some of the things that we need in our construction industry. Do we have them here? We have the raw materials. God has blessed this country in human resources and natural resources. What we need is how to process them and use them as a finished product for our construction industry. So I think that as professional bodies, we should also come together and look at the issue of research and development, where we will look at the resources that we have and see how we can limit some of the importation that we are bringing in from China, from other countries, in order for us to reduce our foreign exchange. Because most times the money we spend in construction is because of the material we are importing from outside into Nigeria. Meanwhile, we have some of those raw materials that we can actually process, finish, and use them as part of our materials. And finally, I want to say that most of the things that we've heard this morning into this afternoon is not new to some of us. But because few persons have sat down and have done the analysis, they have brought it to us. I think that what we should do is to go back to our own professional bodies. As an estate surveyor and valuer, as the president, I need to go back to my institution and say, see, we will not fold our hands and allow things go the way it's going. We need to contribute to whatever thing that is happening, both at the state, at the local government, and at the federal level. So that at the end of the day, we won't be blaming the government is not doing anything, the government is getting it wrong. Like our brother, the second speaker said this afternoon. You see, the more you relax, the more people will begin to do it the way you want. Most of the things he told us this afternoon, some of us didn't know about it, that you are supposed to pay 5%. Meanwhile, some of us are paying 10%. While we are discussing on my table, I told them that this is pure ignorance. Some of us have been paying government overpaying. And meanwhile, the government is also charging us through other tax processes. So we need to also sit down and analyze some of all these processes, ensure that we do not just sit down and allow them go the way they go, and argue where possible, so that they will also know that we are relevant in the scheme of things. This project called Nigeria belongs to all of us, and we shouldn't allow few people to be dictating for us. Let me allow other people to speak. I'm not speaking as a politician, but as an estate surveyor and valuer.
You actually sound more like a politician than a necessary. But I think there are two things here. The professionals amongst us that are working with government or in the public sector, at both federal and other levels. I think what is important is we must strongly push for the involvement of professionals in the construction industry, at least for the preparation of the capital budget. Not just giving envelopes, but benchmarking, the actual things. When you say you're going to build a school, there must be, some benchmark, taking into consideration all the items, the risk factors, and all the other things that are involved. The second thing I think is after this, we need to think of putting a strong lobby group that would be, after just putting our eyes on things, we lobby the National Assembly. You say we are also politicians. Yes, we, in a way, yes, whether we are, or at least we should be able to influence politics. All over the world, people put lobby groups to push their interests. And I think we should be able to do that so that whatever is budgeted for is actually realistic. Let's call the president of NITP to give us some insight also.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator, and let me also thank or join others in thanking the President, Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and FOSI for putting this together. I now understand why the President had to call me again to remind me. Let me say that I picked four words jump out of all of this. And I'm going to start with collusion that the President of NIQS said. Now, we might actually see collusion as a negative word, but I've always said collusion exists, and we have to use it positively. And I start by asking the question, taking my institute as an example. It was established in 1966 with 30 members. And I said, those 30 people, who did they apply to? Who collected their form to say they had become members of NITP? Nobody. They just looked at themselves. Oh yeah, we 30. We're the town planners. Anybody who wants to come in now must apply. That's collusion. So, but they used it positively because they are trying to establish a standard. And it's the same thing, sir, that professionals must understand. By the way, the development of every nation you see in the world owes some responsibility to how well organized the professionals are. So our nation will either collapse because of us or will grow because of us. So there must be this collusion too. The politicians have that collusion. Let me tell you my view about politicians. We are brothers. Yeah, you go to PDP, you go to APC, we'll meet in front. That's my view. That is why they never quarrel. That's why it's easy for someone to cross from PDP to APC today, and the following day is back to PDP. We have to understand that we have a business developing this nation, and it is what we went to school to study that will help us do that. That is why it is called a discipline. Our discipline already conforms us to a style of behavior, some body of knowledge, some ethics that makes us different from the politicians. And so from that, I move to governance. Governance is a key word. Why we are having all of what we are experiencing is about governance. And if we continue to leave the governance issue to politicians alone, and we do not challenge them, talk to them, we will have problems. I was in Edo State I think early March, no, January. I was in Edo State in January. I've been in 25 states of the country, preaching from one state to the other to every governor I can meet that they have to plan. Plan is the next issue. Now, and I was praising the governor for funding the preparation of a regional plan for the state, which they are supposed to have had years ago, and then the master plan for Benin City, which they are also supposed to have had years ago. But he just commissioned the two, and I praised him for doing that. And then I said, but I'm disappointed. Why? Because he did not award those projects to Nigerian professionals. And I asked him, I said, I'm sure that one of the excuses you will give, like other governors, is that Nigerian professionals are not experienced enough. And as he was nodding his head, I asked him, say, Your Excellency, sir, before your first term as governor, where were you governor before? It was a question that took everyone by surprise, and their faces lit up. So if he was never a governor anywhere before, and that position was entrusted to him, and he did it, learned his mistakes, and was even able to confront his godfather so that he could get a second term, I said, that is how Nigerian professionals are going to learn. Give us our nation to develop. We will make the mistakes, but we will learn from those mistakes and forge ahead. Because all of those nations, none of them went elsewhere to go and get their professionals. So we also must learn how to communicate as professionals to those in government. So I don't know whether it was you or him that mentioned business as usual. They want business to go on as usual. I've been in government before, and I know why people like me may not be wanted in government. Because, you know, professionalism makes you stick to ethics. And you will remember, if you are a professional in government, you will remember that 4 years is not forever. You are going back to your colleagues. They are the ones who will give you your pass mark or your fail mark. So if you don't want to fail, when you are in office, you behave as a thorough professional. So we have a kind of battle with those who want business to go on as usual, and that we will have to stop. And then I said planning. You know, I got to know that survey, design, deliveries are not part of exemptions. I said, that's the basis for any project, and that's why we must educate those in government. You know, a politician campaigns and says, I'm going to build 50 roads. And I've been telling Nigerians from state to state where I've been traveling, I've done 25 states. When they tell you that, ask them, where? Because it's in space. But many people don't understand. So they can't connect that economic planning to physical planning, because everything you plan, you will reflect them on the ground. And now the design, the survey that the surveyors will do, the design that will follow, the costing that will follow, you now say they are not exempt from tax. It's going to be serious. So we need to pay attention to planning. But one of the things I have discovered is that we don't plan in Nigeria. In fact, we don't need plans. And I'll tell you why. Planning answers to vision. What a plan does is that it takes you from your present location to the place of vision. But if you do not have a vision, you don't need a plan. It's like somebody who goes to a motor park in the morning and they say, where are you going? He says, I don't know. You don't need a vehicle, or I'm going anywhere. They can put you anywhere. So one of the things we lack is the vision. And without a vision, there cannot be planning. We must now begin to look for men of vision. That's where we have to participate. You may not go partisan, because those partisan things, some things you cannot stick. Me, I don't understand them. If they ask me to do some work for them, I can do the work. But I don't understand. In politics, 1 + 1 is not 2. And that's what I was taught in primary school. 1 + 1 is 2. But you can tell you it's 5. I don't understand. But I can identify somebody who has a vision. Because somebody who has a vision is the one who needs a plan. And it's somebody who plans that will now begin a design. Every beautiful building that they want to pay for started in somebody's brain. It started in an architect's brain. So roads that you see started in an engineer's brain. So that's how those things work. So we really must pay attention to planning. And finally, before I say finally, really, you know this our construction sector. APBN has a sector for us. I've always said that something is wrong with that sector, because APBN has 7 construction professional bodies, some of us who are here. But I tell you that you can't do construction without financing, without funding. So we need accountants. You can't do construction without title documents. So we need legal people. You can't do construction now without thinking of issues like access control and things like that. We need people in the ICT. So we must begin to broaden this thing that we call our construction sector. That is what will make this collaboration or collusion possible, because now it will not just be those of us in the this construction sector that we know, but we'll also be involving the tax people. In fact, when he said we should go and read the appropriation, I was telling you that I think I will need a consultant also to explain it to me. That's the truth. You know why? Things they don't want you to understand, they put them in small letters. So that by the time you are reading, you are feeling sleepy and you dump it. So what I have done in my office is to have a tax consultant. Because in Lagos, consultants pay 10% withholding. I've been paying it since 2008. So, and it's 5% they will send to FIRS. And then keep 5% to themselves. So, we need to broaden this thing. And all of what we are saying here will not make sense if we have not defined the value of a Nigerian life. What's the purpose of our gathering? Why are we building roads? Why are we making budgets? We are not making budgets to acquire things. We are making budgets to take care of human beings. And that's why Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said, you put people before things. I think here we put things before people. That's why it doesn't matter to people whether they budget for something and that thing is done or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this wise intervention. We will pick on the president of Castle to have another dimension to the discussion. President Castle.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm highly delighted to be here. First, I must give kudos to the organizers of this event, the 2 presidents, FOSI and NIQS. It's heartwarming and it's a pointer in the right direction. I once remember many years ago when I was active in APBN, such events used to take place. It used to be part of their annual activity. APBN organizes budget x-rays. I had to give papers so many times there. And FOSI is an active member, and the chambers of commerce used to participate. And it used to be a robust discussion, which is then presented to government. But what happened thereafter, I don't know. But today, I must thank the 2 keynote speakers. My good friend Bode has highlighted how over years capital allocation has gone down to almost 30%. No nation can develop with a meager allocation for capital development because we're a developing country. We are not even developing yet. So if allocation is dwindling all the time, then there cannot be improvement, there cannot be growth. Then they pointed out really the parlous and really appalling state of the construction industry in their presentation. And that is worrisome. How can we get back to a position where the industry can function as it should be? Said the industry is the barometer for measuring the growth and of a nation, because it warehouses a lot of human element in it. And if you want to judge how a nation is doing well, you look at the industry, the construction industry. We need more than this gathering to move forward to where we can become impactful within governance. Many years ago, it was proposed that we have a Nigerian Construction Industry Board that warehouses all the professionals, all the construction companies, all the material suppliers, all the nominated specialist subcontractors, the clients too. And that is still a global standard. That is what has brought Britain to become more efficient. That's what has brought Malaysia to be more efficient. That's what has brought Singapore to be more efficient. Until we'll establish this National Construction Industry Board that warehouses all the professionals and the active players, we will not go anywhere. It will just be a talk shop. So the takeaway is let all the current presidents come together. Look at this structure. It's a global standard, and it will help this industry to do well. Thank you very much.
President of ACAN was here.
It's not legalized.
The president of ACAN was here. He had to leave for another meeting. We couldn't get the president of Cobon and Coren to be here, and NSC to be here. They have other engagements too. But, something came up about the issue of development of local skills. I know FOSI is doing something about that. Their own members are winning, but with 80 membership, 80 strong membership, I think, and I know Cobon also does some training. I think we need to develop local skills, because at the offshore level, you find people looking for Togolese, Chadians, for some small jobs like POP, like tiling and so on. So I think there's a need to develop that capacity from within. Even though we're discussing budget now, I mean, this is just there's additional information. President NIQS, do you want to add something to this discussion before we find out if there's from the floor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Laliu. Let me first thank my brother presidents who honored the invitation to be here. Like the moderator said, the president of the Association of Consulting Engineering in Nigeria was here with the managing director, but they had to go for the current assembly or current meeting today, and I'm sure that's probably why NSC is not here. I spoke with the president of NIOB, and I said he would be here, but I'm sure maybe something came up and he couldn't be here. But having said that, it is hoped that this will not be the last, and it's not just a flash in the pan. As a matter of fact, the conversation we had at the organizing committee is that sometime in October, we'll have another one, just about the time the budget will be presented at the National Assembly. And hopefully, my brother, president, all the other stakeholders in the construction sector will be invited. So we'll have that joint committee comprising not only NIQS and FOSI, but NIA, NIQS, NITP, and ACEN, so that we can all come up with something that we can influence. It was also instructive what Alhaji Aziz Alatu mentioned about this tax. And then somebody said, when you don't want an African to know certain things, put it down in black and white, because they will hardly read. It's instructive that most of us never read the Finance Act from 2019 till now. We saw it. I remember that our current Secretary Professional Development at one time circulated on all our platforms the Finance Act. Was it 2021 or 2020? But I think most of us just gave a cursory glance over it, and we didn't see where it impacted on us. But having seen this, well, it's instructive that maybe now, because it's not only the NIQS, but also NIE and NIQS. This probably will be an opportunity, because I was also hoping that we can use this roundtable to kickstart that board that Mr. Gallic mentioned. Why should it be that the policies affecting construction is designed by those in Federal Ministry of Works? Why not the major stakeholders, the people who actually wear the shoes? I'm talking about the contractors and consultants, who are those who are here. They are the ones that feel the impact of whatever this policy will be. We should be the one, and that should have been the work of that CIDB. When Olagarba was talking about Latam report, EGA report, that was basically from their own industry board. So there is a need for all of us, the major stakeholders in this industry, to come together. And I'm hoping that I have the assurance of my brother president that this will not be the last that we'll have this gathering. At least on a quarterly basis, we should have a gathering of all the presidents of all the major stakeholders in the industry. Let's look at government policies as it affects us, and then what are the next steps that we need to take. Having said that, yes, there are issues of finances, but sometimes what we also don't realize is that you have the legislation there, but that is not obeyed by the same government that issues those legislation. If you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act, under Fiscal Responsibility Act, if you take on a contract and the government does not pay, they are supposed to pay interest. But which government agency or ministry will pay interest? So the law is actually there. Even though I know that NIQS about 4 years ago were proposing a Payment Assurance Act, which we worked on. We were working on it with the special assistant to the legislator, to the president, Senator Etaema or so. But he never saw the light of it. Maybe it's something we also want to look at. On the other side of it, in other parts of the world, there is what they call project bank accounts. In which case, for every project, it could be at the CBN or it could be at maybe the Nigerian Infrastructure Bank or whatever. The money for that particular project is deposited. So when the contractor goes to site, he does the work, and if the work is certified, he takes the certificate to that bank, and the money just moves into his account. Maybe it's something also we might want to explore to see how we can save the construction industry or the contractors from going bankrupt. It's only in Nigeria that we've been lucky that all of us, we seem to have a way around issues. Otherwise, from some of the gloomy pictures that have been painted, a lot of contracting firms should have packed up. If government already is owing trillions to local contractors, and then you are wondering that the Nigerian contracting industry is still standing, then there must be some other ways that people are doing business that are not known to law. On this note, I think I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to assure you that by the special grace of God, come October this year, the second edition of this event will hold. Thank you all, and God bless you.
All right, the day is gone long, it's already past 2. I don't know whether there are important interventions or comments We can take one or two for just 2 minutes, and then we have 2 hands, 3 hands, contributions. Okay. Then you, then you.
I'm the first deputy president of APBN. I just recognize Joseph Olusegun Ajalekoko, a past president of APBN. This discussion has been beautiful. All the stories, and we are blaming government. All these professionals sitting here, they are in government, isn't it? They are also the consultants of government, just as some of you are consultants for private people. They are in government. I like what the president of NIQS has just said. You will be wondering, these construction companies should have gone out of business. How come they are still in business? Is there some unhealthy collusion between the professionals in government and those out of government that is making the government non-functional? Now I'm saying this with a deep sense of responsibility, because some of this budget that you see does not go for the work. It goes for selfish interest of some professionals. Now, professions are created by society to work for and on behalf of society. But some professionals work for themselves. Go to Asokoro. It is the professionals in government that have fantastic work. That's where some of this budget money go to, instead of going for the work that it was meant for. Professions are supposed to be service-oriented. Whether you are in private or government, nobody should see it as a favor for giving a construction company an assignment or a contract, because professional activities are service. They are giving us services. So I just want to ask, and let us ponder over this. Budget of government is not created by politicians. It is created by professionals. They are processed. I'm not aware if any politician signs a check or a voter. Most of it are done by professionals in the civil service. Whatever to approve work done, to make recommendations, they are all professionally done. Even the financial management are all supposed to be professionally done. Are we behaving as professionals, or we have become complicit in disgovernance of our government institutions? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Tunde Oshinobi is my name. I'm a QS. I'm also a builder, and I'm also a lawyer. I focus majorly on procurement law, which is very, very germane to the subject matter. I found out that on several occasions, why are the contractors not paid after they have finished their work? Why are they keeping silent? I think it has to do with something else. I've interacted with some contractors, and I could recollect before a contractor client of mine who agreed that we should go to court against Ministry of Defense. It took a lot of persuasion, but by the time we were in court, he was invited to negotiate, and he was eventually paid. I have one matter currently against NCAA, a contractor client of mine. His contract was wrongfully determined. That's not the issue. Because if it's wrongly determined, anticipated profits can be claimed, which we did. We served them with notice of arbitration. They refused to respond. We went to court, and the court has ordered that we should go to arbitration, which they are going to be served today or tomorrow. There are some civil servants, I'm sorry to say this, I was in the service for donkey years. There are some civil servants who believe that whatever they do, nothing can happen. The Public Procurement Act is meaningless to many of them. But by the grace of God, last week Thursday, I was involved in a matter which was decided last week Thursday, involving Abba Moro and 2 others. The PAMSEC was found guilty to be sentenced 27th of this month. And what the law says is 5 years imprisonment. And many PAMSECs, they are now afraid, they are now fidgeting, because they know that with that one, it's a signal to them. So not until some contractors, I'm not saying all, because there are some, if you say you want to go and look at what they have done, you might not meet anything on the ground. But those who have done their work and they are not paid, the provision of the law is there. Failure to pay within 60 days, the law makes provision for it. And like my brother here said, that most of the time we don't read. And when we read, we are complacent. We don't want to pursue it. And that's what has led us to this stage. That's just my own opinion. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Adeola Jide. I'm a NIQS. I'm equally owner of a construction firm. My own contribution will go us that we have a very good forum like this. Maybe the forum can broaden its membership and encourage these once forgotten formation of National Construction Bank, because as we all know that banks in Nigeria will not loan or fund any contract awarded by government. So if this gathering will again look into that and see maybe they can still go back to it. I know sometimes Ajanle Koko was actively involved in this. If maybe the forum can go back to that these banks will be sold to cater for the funding of projects in Nigeria. I think it will equally solve our sufferings as contractors and firm individuals. Thank you.
And I'm the Secretary General of the Institute of Construction Industry Arbitrators. We've had a very lively discussion, but the majority of what we've discussed here centered around the contract, the standard form contract that is drafted by the Federal Ministry of Force. A lot of the things we said here can actually be accommodated in these standard form contracts. But the problem we experience is that a lot of people don't believe that you can amend the standard form contract, or you can add or remove to it. You can actually add or remove to this standard form, because you have the power to negotiate it before signing. But what we do is we just sign the contract and go away. And then the shortcomings that have been in this contract since the first edition was enacted, we continue regurgitating them every now and then. The mistake that was made way back in 1963, in the first edition, is still there in the 1990 edition. It's still there in the 2017 edition. And I'm even surprised that a lot of us don't know that there is a 2017 edition of this standard form. And it's only when you go to sign the contract in the ministry that they will give you whichever edition they deem fit. And if you don't know that there's a current edition, you may end up signing a previous edition. And even the previous edition, with all its shortcomings, you just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. So my own contribution is that we should take time to have a second look at whichever standard form you are being asked to sign and add or remove whatever you want to add or remove. Because even Mr. Augustus said it, that this contract should also be related to the interest rate. Because and also the currency of transaction. Sometimes you have two currencies involved in the transaction, and they pay you in one currency. It is your duty to say, look, there is a foreign component in this contract. Therefore, please, so percentage of the contract should be in foreign currency. They will not say no. But the only thing is that we don't really, pay attention to a lot of these details. Yeah, and also, there are people who can assist us in negotiating these things because they have the skills to do it. Let us also look around and see how we can make use of their services so that we will be able to move the industry forward. Thank you.
I'm a politician, but I'm a grounded construction person. El-Rufai has encouraged us to do that. If we don't do that, we'll lose our business. So we have to leave our comfort zone to go to where it's not comfortable so that we can make others to be comfortable. Now, I would just want to add, we are running up. The next version of this, our gathering, should have major stakeholders to be part of this. And it's very important we note them. Number one, we are talking of finance here. Where is finance minister here? We are talking of, we are being hold money. Where is the debt management office here? We are talking of payment being hold. Where is payment bond here? We are being made to do performance bond, advance payment bond. Where is payment guarantee bond? It could be a requirement. Must it be compulsory that you take government work? This is the point. Why I'm sitting here, so if you take them to court, will they give you work again? Why are we afraid? Somebody has done that. That means you are still profitable. If it is not profitable, you will leave what is not profitable. You choose your client zone so that you can segment your client. Now we are here, we are talking about law. Where's National Assembly here? We must make them to be key stakeholders here. Most of them are politicians. Most of them are not with background like mine that I want to go there. If I get there, they won't want to erase construction. I will keep quiet. I will speak like my colleague that is there, our senator. That is at least speaking for us. How many of them? It's a game of you make your point, the chorus have the floor. Even if we speak from now to tomorrow, if there are not numbers of people like him, you will not get your way. So we must encourage our colleagues to get there so that we can be in numbers. Then if you are talking of National Assembly, two key committees need to be taken seriously. PAC, that is Public Account Committee, and Finance and Appropriation Committee. They are stakeholders that we must take along. Then we are talking about we don't have money. Mr. Jale Lokogo in the last 30 years have been fronting for a bank, construction bank. What stopped you and me to buy a stake, float a bank? We had about 4 or 5 banks in the last 5 years. Nobody stopped you establishing a bank. We must do one so that we can do it better. Then we have a country in the Eastern Africa here, thereabout. You can't dare not abandon a project. Because it's criminal in their country to abandon a project. So why are we having more than 10,000 abandoned projects in Nigeria and nobody says anything? This is an openness. Now, the stakeholders to go, I've just mentioned two things: payment bond, irrevocable standing order. That's what it comes to under this statutory payment. You don't need to be asked. That payment will go there. If you are signing a contract, now let it be ISPO based, so that you don't need to go and ask them to pay you your money. It is compulsory before they pay the other aspect of the budget. The money goes back to your account. We can insist this organization should start that, so that we can have ISPO in all our contracts. If you have that, you don't need to bother about anything. You don't need to beg anybody to pay your money. That will make it better. We need to read further than concept of it, or architecture, or engineering, so that we can get it better. Now, 4C members, please float a bank so that you solve your problem. Thank you.
We have two online interventions from President Emewele and Onoshile.
Murita Aliu. First, I must commend the organizers, especially the President, NIQS, and the Council. It's a very good outing, and it's unfortunate I couldn't be there, but I'm there in spirit. Having said this, I want to encourage all the other institutions, especially with the presidents over there, NIA, NISB, NITP, and others. Our industry must survive, and we need cohesion and a single voice. We cannot run away from that. We must be able to speak loudly, or else we'll become extinguished, and nobody will hear from us. So you, as a leadership, you owe us that now, to speak with a loud voice. There must be a collaboration, successful one at that matter, and with loud voice to the public and to the government consistently. Secondly, our industry is becoming an endangered species. It must not die. The way the economy is going, Nigerian consumers will go into extinction. Where Mr. Olagariba spoke about manufacturing industries, we had many of these industries before. We were producing glass in Nigeria, Oluwa glass, and from other places. We were producing PVC tires, Dunlop, all types of tires. But they were closed up. They've closed shop. We had them before. They closed shop. They left. Now, even contractors, we have very few expatriate contractors left, and we have few local contractors even left. We're going into extinction, and it must not happen. So it should not die. We must speak up. The government must give us peculiar laws and regulations to help this industry. They just did something similar to Dangote refinery. Dangote is too big to fail. So this concern is even bigger than Dangote. And so the House of Assembly, the Senate, the presidency, they must listen to us. Only if we speak, and we must speak. Lastly, just like the Constitution guarantees everyone the right to exist, we have a right to exist in this industry. We have a right to exist. We have a right to be paid our entitlements when we work. And I'm saying this to join the 4C president. As a contractor, you are in business. You have a right to be paid for your sweat. You've done it. Nobody is doing you a favor by paying you. They must not frustrate you because they want something in their pocket before they press your certificate for payment. Let anybody hold your papers for payment. Once we have the law that guarantees that you must be paid within a certain time, that helps. But that is not even sufficient. If you are not paid, like Mr. Shinobi said, after 60 days, then you go for dispute resolution. How easy is that dispute resolution? Arbitration and litigation. That's what we have in our laws now. But there must be other alternative ways of dispute resolution that are faster and guaranteed, and that is the adjudication. Adjudication, the adjudicator is given 28 days to resolve. So if you have an issue, take it to adjudication.
Let the administration, let it be part of a dispute resolution, that your payment issues can be resolved within 28 days, and by a professional who knows about the contracts. And then it's easier. But when you are not paid and you are not sure, by going to the current litigation, dispute resolution mechanism we have now, which will take you 2-3 years. Arbitration is now taking 3, 5, 6 years now. Talk less litigation. So we need to look into this aspect in the industry. New laws for our industry, new regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, round up. Okay, on behalf of the organizers and all of us here, I sincerely thank everyone. It has been quite an exciting interaction, and the contributions are quite genuine. And I'm sure, let me sincerely, even though it's not my duty to thank, but let me thank our resource persons, Augusto and Aziz, for really highlighting quite a number of things for us. And also let's thank the membership there that actually have been around and resilient. And we pray that this will lead to something bigger. Mr. Okay, I think we thank you very much.
Has participated in this roundtable, and to say that it is collaboration like this we need to survive. Now, the question I wanted to ask Mr. Augustus, earlier on, I think there should not be a take-home question, and I'll still get across to him to attempt to the question, which is the Appropriation Act. Is it designed to reflect the construction industry or the On that note, I think that this is, we need more of collaboration like this, coming together of all the, of all the disciplines in the built environment, and so that we can talk with one voice and ensure the survival of the construction industry, particularly in this period of instability in terms of prices of materials. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. President.
QS Olagaba, QS Batfase, to please join for a group photograph, as well as Alaji Aziz to also join. Then the APBN First Deputy President, please also come up stage for group photograph. Please. All right, super. It's quite an historical moment, really. Very, very historical ability to bring all of us together to take this significant decision. So, thank you very much. Gentlemen, if you could please have your seats. In another 2 minutes, we'll be out of here. Can I have both of them here? Please, a round of applause for distinguished gentlemen.
On behalf of the Nigerian Institute of Public Surveyors and the Federation of Construction Industry of Nigeria, we present this award to Alaji Aziz Alatola in appreciation of his presentation at this first ever business roundtable jointly put together by Federation of Construction Industries and the Council of Public Surveyors. With the theme Appropriation 2022 and the Avenue for Construction.
Presented by Malam Abdulaziz. We appreciate Mr. Bode Augusto, who has always been a big brother, always ready to help the construction industry. I appreciate Alaji Aziz Ataloye, presidents of associations in the built environment. I appreciate each and every one of you. Architect Enyi Ben Ebo, NIA, the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, represented by the President, Estate Surveyor Chief Sir Emmanuel Wiki. Thank you very much. We appreciate the Association of Consulting Engineers in Nigeria, represented by their president, Engineer Ajibade Oke. The Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, represented by our own big brother, Town Planner Olutoyin Ayinde. We also appreciate Mr. Ajande Koko Joseph, and we even are surprised to find that in our midst, we have Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria. The national president was here a very brief while ago. We have spoken extensively, we have had a very robust discussion. We assure you that our rapporteurs will prepare a communique. This will be shared with all participants and the general public. I sincerely hope you left your email address, because the presentations made here today will be sent to your email. I saw many people were trying to take pictures of what was going on, but we assure you, if you left your email at the registration, you will get it in your box by tomorrow morning. Once again, on behalf of Federation of Construction Industry and NIQS, we say thank you for being here. And we believe that together with the other members of the built environment, we shall make a difference in Nigeria. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.
All right, thank you to the DG of FOSI, Engineer Mrs. Olubumi Adekoje, for that wonderful vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I will also at this point in time like to thank you all for being a wonderful. Please clap very well, okay? My balance can depend on this, all right? And whoever is writing my check is listening. I remain with you, Bolaji Shotunde, the Secretary International Affairs of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and it's really been a pleasure. Can we all now rise for the national anthem as we close? Please note, as you go out of this hall, we have a gift for you. Please make sure you get your own gift as you walk out of this hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you, everyone. And remember, collaboration is also collusion. God bless you.
You say it's not before, now it is. We will show you.